Hey there and welcome back. Tonight we will be exploring another chapter of history, told slowly, calmly, and with all the little details that make it both fascinating and just boring enough to help you drift off to sleep. If you enjoy these sleepy history stories, a like or subscribe really helps more people find them. I also love knowing where you are listening from, so feel free to leave a comment with your location and the time where you are. It is always amazing to see how people all around the world are falling asleep to these stories. Now let's settle and get comfortable and begin. Your eyes open slowly, heavy from sleep, and the first sensation you notice is the firmness of the mattress beneath you. It is not the memory foam or the spring mattress you might know today. Instead, it is horsehair, tightly packed, lumpy in places, and faintly prickly where the sheet has slipped. This is the bed of a respectable Victorian household in the mid-19th century. The wooden frame is narrow and heavy, painted black, and creaks faintly if you shift your weight. The air is cold. A fire had been lit the night before in the small grate, but now only dull embers remain, glowing faintly against the sooty bricks. They give off just enough warmth to hold back the worst of the chill, though you can still see your breath in the early morning air. The smell of coal smoke lingers. In fact, it never leaves. Coal hangs over London like a heavy curtain, creeping into every crack of the window frame, every gap beneath the door, every fold of fabric. It is the city's perfume, acrid and sharp, clinging to hair, clothes, and skin alike. Outside, the city is already stirring. Iron-rimmed wheels clatter over uneven cobblestones. Horses snort and stamp their hooves as they pull carts and carriages along narrow lanes. Somewhere in the distance a dog barks, then another, setting off a short chorus. From the upper floor of this house you hear it all in softened echoes, a muffled symphony of Victorian London waking to another day. You glance around the room, still half in shadow. A heavy wardrobe looms in the corner, its mirrored door reflecting the faint firelight. Beside it stands a washstand with a porcelain basin and a jug of cold water, ready for your morning ablutions. On the dressing table, small objects wait neatly in place: a brush with a silver handle, a small bottle of bergamot oil, a sewing kit, and a Bible with a worn leather cover. The furniture is solid, dark, and heavy, much like the age itself. The sheets around you are cottons, cool to the touch, but clean and carefully laundered. Over them lies a quilt stitched in floral patterns, weighed down with thick battings. Beneath it you wear a flannel nightgown, buttoned all the way to the top. In this world, even in the privacy of your bedrooms, modesty is paramount. To leave skin bare would be considered improper, even scandalous. On the bedside table rests a small brass bell. You reach for it and give it a gentle ring. The sound is delicate, but sharp enough to carry through the house. Within a minute, you hear the quiet patter of footsteps on the wooden stairs. The door opens, and your maid enters. She is young, perhaps only a few years older than you, but her day has already begun long before yours. She curtsies quickly, hands clasped in front of her apron. "Good morning, miss," she says softly. Her name is Mary, though you rarely use it. She is both ever present and invisible, moving through the household as though part of the furniture, careful not to intrude beyond her stations. Without waiting for your reply, she crosses to the window and pulls back the heavy velvet drapes. Pale grey daylight seeps into the rooms, weak and washed out. The glass panes are smudged with soot from the countless chimneys outside, and no matter how often they are cleaned, the grime returns within hours. London is not a city of sunshine and clear skies. It is a city of fog, coal smokes, and mist rising from the river. People call it pea soup, a thick, greenish haze that makes the lamps glow like small moons. On some days it is so dense that you cannot see across the street. This morning it is merely a dull haze, hanging low but not oppressive, a reminder of the city's endless appetite for coal. Mary moves to the wardrobe, opening the heavy doors with a groan of wood. Inside hang your dresses, each one carefully brushed and folded the night before. The colors are dark, deep blues, browns, and blacks. The fabrics are stiff and heavy, meant not for comfort but for propriety. She turns her head and asks quietly, "What would you like to wear today, miss?" Her question is not really a question. The choice is already made. Your day will be marked by appointments. Calls to make, acquaintances to greet, appearances to uphold. The dress you wear is not simply clothing, it is a message, a signal of respectability, wealth, and self-control. In this society, everything about you speaks even when you remain silent. As Mary lays out the first layer, a simple cotton shifts, you rise reluctantly from the bed. The cold floor bites at your bare feet before she slips stockings over them. You shiver slightly as she begins the process of transforming you into a Victorian lady. This ritual will take nearly an hour, layers of undergarments, corsets, petticoats, and more. But here, in this moment, you are only beginning the long journey through the endless rules of Victorian life. For now, the day stretches ahead of you, waiting, a day of ritual etiquette and invisible codes. A day where every step, every word, every glance must be carefully measured. In this world, appearances are everything, and even the act of waking in your own bed is already part of the performance. As the last traces of sleep fade, you realize you are not merely waking in London. You are waking into an entire system of rules, one that will guide and confine you until the day's end. The fire flickers faintly. Mary clears her throat softly, waiting for your attention. Outside, the wheels of a carriage rattle away into the distance. And so begins another day in Victorian London. The morning in a Victorian household does not begin with the master or mistress. It begins hours earlier, in the silent tread of servants moving through dark corridors, striking flints to relight dying fires, fetching water from the scullery pumps, and polishing boots to a mirror shine. By the time you ring your small brass bell from the bedside tables, the machinery of the house has already been turning for hours. Your maid, Mary, is one of the first faces you see each day. She is dressed plainly in a black wool dress with a white apron tied tightly around her waist. Her hair is drawn back severely, with no stray curls allowed. It is still early, but she looks as though she has been awake for hours, and she has. A maid's day begins at 5 in the morning, sometimes earlier, with tasks that must be completed before the family of the house stirs. When she enters your bedroom, she does so quietly, careful not to disturb the hush of the morning more than necessary. She curtsies when you look at her, though the gesture is quick, perfunctory, part of the ingrained rhythm of service. Her presence is a reminder of the invisible system that supports your life. Without Mary and the other servants, this house would not function. Fires would go out, meals would not appear, and your world of order and propriety would crumble into chaos. She begins her work immediately. The curtains are drawn back to let in the weak London daylight. She checks the grate and, seeing the embers nearly gone, kneels to build the fire again. The sound of coal being shoveled, the crackle of kindling, and the sharp scent of smoke soon fill the rooms. A small wave of warmth begins to push back against the chill. While the fire takes hold, she moves about the room with quiet efficiency. She sets the water jug on the washstand, ready for your morning ablutions. There is no running water here, no hot tap to turn. The water is drawn from the kitchen, carried up the stairs in heavy porcelain jugs, and left in basins to chill overnight. When you dip your hands into it to wash your face, the cold is sharp enough to make you gasp. A bracing reminder that comfort is not the aim of the Victorian morning. Cleanliness, restraint, and propriety are. Mary does not chatter as she works. Servants are not meant to fill the air with idle words unless addressed. Their voices are soft, their presence deliberately muted. Yet every movement is an act of anticipation. Placing your gloves within reach, arranging your hairbrushes neatly, checking that your shoes have been polished to a mirror shine. She thinks ahead so you do not have to. In this system, the lady is meant to glide through her day, her path smoothed and prepared by unseen hands. When she speaks, it is only to ask, "Shall I bring in hot water for your tea, miss?" Her voice is polite, almost rehearsed, her eyes never meeting yours for too long. Deference is part of the role. You nod, and she leaves, her footsteps soft against the worn floorboards. As you wait, you reflect on the structure of the household itself. Beneath the roof of this London townhouse, the family inhabits the upper floors while the servants live and work below. The kitchen, scullery, and servants' quarters are hidden from sight, tucked away in the basement. The sounds of clattering pots, rushing feet, and whispered conversations drift upward faintly, but rarely intrude into the drawing rooms or parlours. The house is carefully designed to keep the worlds of the served and the serving separate. This division is not merely architectural, it is social. Servants know your habits, your moods, your weaknesses. They see you at your most unguarded, and yet they are expected to remain shadows, to exist on the edge of visibility, facilitating life without ever sharing in it. It is a delicate balance of dependence and distance. When Mary returns, she carries a tray. On it rests a teapot covered with a quilted cozy, a porcelain cup, and a small plate with 2 slices of buttered toast. It is not breakfast. That will come later formally, with the rest of the family. But a gentle beginning, a small courtesy for the early hours. She sets the tray on the dressing table and steps back. You take the cup of tea, the steam curling upward in the cold air. The taste is faintly bitter, the warmth seeping into your chest as you sip. Outside, the muffled sound of the street continues, carriage wheels, footsteps, the occasional call of a hawker beginning his rounds. Inside, the fire burns more brightly now, casting long shadows that shift across the room's heavy furniture. Mary begins laying out your clothing for the day. She starts with the chemise, plain and white, which forms the foundation of everything else. Over it will go the corset, then petticoats, then the dress itself. It is a ritual as rigid as prayer, and she knows each step by heart. For now, she waits patiently, her hands folded, until you are ready to begin. You glance at her, noting again the restraint in her demeanor. She will dress you, lace your corsets, arrange your hair, but she will never presume familiarity. Even though she sees you in your most private moments, she is bound by invisible walls stronger than brick or stone. In the stillness of the rooms, the unspoken rules hang as heavily as the velvet curtains. The servant does not speak unless spoken to, does not sit in the presence of her mistress, does not offer opinion or complaint. Her world is one of duty and obedience, her own desires pressed into silence, and yet without her, you could not step out the door respectably dressed, could not meet the exacting demands of Victorian society. As the tea warms you and the fire flickers steadily, you realize that your morning ritual is not simply about cleanliness or preparation. It is a performance, one supported by an entire cast working behind the scenes. You are the central figure, but the stage is held together by those who move silently in the background. Soon enough, Mary will begin lacing the corsets, pulling the strings tighter and tighter until your breath comes shallow. But for now, in these early moments of tea and firelight, the day has only just begun. The quiet clink of porcelain fades as you set aside your teacup. The fire in the grate burns brighter now, chasing away the morning chill, and the day's true ritual begins. Dressing is no simple act in Victorian London. It is a ceremony, a transformation, and at times a small ordeal. Mary, your maid, stands at the ready. She has already laid out the garments in careful order upon the chair, the chemise, the corset, the layers of petticoats, the crinolines, and finally the gown itself. To dress properly is to be encased, layer upon layer, until the body beneath is scarcely visible. You begin with the chemise, a simple white slip of cotton. It is plain and unadorned, but it is essential. The chemise protects the finer fabrics from the oils of the skin, and it shields your body from the rough seams and stays of the corsets. Soft though it looks, the fabric is slightly coarse, the weave sturdy, built to withstand frequent laundering. You step into it, pulling it over your head as Mary straightens the neckline and smooths the folds. Next comes the corset. Mary lifts it with practiced hands, the stiff whalebone and tightly stitched fabric creaking faintly as she positions it around your waist. The laces hang loose for now, but soon they will be pulled tighter, drawing your form into the narrow shape demanded by fashion. "Shall I begin, miss?" Mary asks softly. You nod and she pulls. The sensation is immediate. The fabric constricts around your ribs, your breath shortened. Another tug, and then another, each one pressing your body inward. You place your hands against the bedpost for balance as your waist contracts inch by inch. Tighter, you instruct, knowing that society expects no less. Mary obeys, her hands moving swiftly, the laces hissing through their eyelets. At last, when your lungs can expand only halfway, she ties the cord into a neat bow. The corset does not merely shape your figures. It announces your status, your discipline, your ability to conform to the rigid demands of society. A loose corset would suggest laziness, a lack of refinement. A properly laced one shows self-control, even if it comes at the cost of comfort. With the corset secured, Mary helps you into a long petticoat, then another still. Each layer adds bulk and weight, transforming your outline into the wide, bell-shaped silhouette of the age. The air between the fabrics traps warmth, but it also weighs heavily, making movement slower, more deliberate. To walk gracefully under such encumbrance requires practice. Now comes the crinoline, a cage of steel hoops connected by fabric tapes. Mary holds it out, the structure spreading wide like the frame of a great lampshade. You step carefully into the circles, lifting your chemise as she lowers it around your waist. The hoops clatter faintly, cold metal against wood, before settling into place. At once your skirt flares outward, extending far beyond your natural frame. It is an architecture of fashions, turning your body into a moving sculpture. Over the crinoline, Mary drapes yet another petticoat, smoothing the fabric so that no hoop shows beneath. Then at last, she lifts the gown itself. Today, it is a deep blue day dress. Its bodice cut close to the corset, its sleeves long, its skirt vast. She fastens buttons down the back, each one small and stubborn, requiring patience to close. The fabric settles heavily over your shoulders, pulling slightly at the waist where it strains against the corsets. The gown is weighty, nearly 15 pounds in total with all its layers. You feel its pressure with every breath, every movement. Yet this is not considered a burden, but a badge of refinement. The effort it takes to wear such clothing proves that you do not labor with your hands, that your life is not spent in toil, but in propriety and display. Mary steps back to survey her work, adjusting the line of the sleeves, smoothing the skirt where it falls. Then she turns to your hair. With deft fingers, she brushes it back from your face, drawing it tightly into a bun at the nape of your neck. No loose strands are permitted. A lady's hair is to be orderly, restrained, a reflection of her composure. "Will you wear gloves today, miss?" she asks, holding up 2 pairs. White kid leather, fine and fitted, or simple woolen mittens. You choose the gloves, for no respectable lady would show her bare hands in public. She helps you slip them on, tugging each finger neatly into place. On the dressing table lies a small bottle of bergamot oil. Heavy perfumes have fallen out of favor. Queen Victoria herself declared them vulgar. Instead, the fashion is for light scents, citrus, lavender, rosewater. You dab a little on a handkerchief, enough to smell fresh and clean, but not enough to suggest excess or impropriety. At last, you are dressed. From chemise to gown, from stockings to gloves, the transformation is complete. You glance in the mirror and see not only your reflection, but the reflection of an entire system of values: modesty, restraint, and discipline. Every layer conceals, every garment restricts, every accessory reminds you that in this society, to be seen is to be judged. Mary gathers the discarded nightgown and sets it aside to be laundered. She straightens the room once more, ensuring that everything is in its place. Then she steps back, hands folded, waiting for your next instruction. You draw in a careful breath, feeling the corset press against your ribs, and rise from the chair. The weight of the dress sways around you, the hoops of the crinoline brushing faintly against the furniture as you move. Your steps must be small, deliberate. Grace is measured not by freedom of movement, but by how well you appear untroubled despite the burden you carry. The process has taken nearly an hour, yet it is only the beginning of the day. Ahead lies a breakfast table laden with food you can scarcely eat. A string of social appointments governed by invisible rules, and a constant balancing act of appearances. For now, though, you are ready. Fully dressed, fully encased, you are no longer merely yourself. You are a Victorian lady, presented to the world as the age demands. The weight of your gown settles heavily upon your shoulders as you descend the staircase, each step softened by the thick runner laid down the center of the stairs. The household hums with quiet order. Somewhere, a clock ticks steadily. From the kitchen below, the faint clatter of pots and pans drifts upwards, joined by the savory aroma of bacon and toast carried through the halls. Breakfast in a Victorian household is not the casual affair you might imagine. It is not toast snatched quickly on the way to work, nor a hurried cup of coffee before catching a train. It is an institution, a ritual that begins each day with order, formality, and restraint. You enter the dining room, a long space lit by the pale grey of the morning sky filtering through tall windows. The heavy curtains have been drawn back just enough to admit light, but not so much as to allow the coal smoke outside to intrude more than it must. The table is already set with silver cutlery, porcelain dishes, and gleaming glassware. A starched white cloth covers the surface, and in the center rests a modest arrangement of flowers. Their fragrance a faint but welcome contrast to the ever-present suit of the city. Your father is seated at the head of the table, newspaper in hand. His posture is erect, his spectacles perched low on his nose. He acknowledges you only with the slightest nod before returning to the columns of print. Conversation at the breakfast table is measured, subdued. Loud voices or laughter would be improper. At the far end of the table sits your mother. She is already dressed for the day, her hair arranged with precision, her gown immaculate. A small stack of correspondence lies before her, and she writes steadily, pausing only to sip her tea. To appear busy, even at breakfast, is a sign of diligence and propriety. You take your place along the sides, sliding carefully into your chair. The hoops of your crinoline bump softly against the wood, and you adjust yourself so that your skirt spreads gracefully rather than awkwardly. A maid appears at your shoulder, placing a plate before you, eggs fried lightly, a slice of bacon crisp, a spoonful of kidneys, rich and savory, toast stacked neatly beside a small dish of butter. A bowl of porridge sits nearby, its steam curling faintly upward. Victorian breakfasts are hearty, for they are often the largest meal of the day. Yet your corset makes eating more than a few small bites a slow and careful task. You cut the eggs into tiny pieces, lifting them delicately to your lips, mindful never to open your mouth too wide or chew too audibly. The kidneys are flavorful but heavy, and after a few cautious tastes, you turn your attention to the toast. Your mother glances up briefly. "Remember, Jane," she says softly, her pen never pausing. "Mrs. Hartley's daughter has just become engaged. Be sure to congratulate her when we call upon them today. But do not ask about the details. That would be presumptuous." You nod, absorbing the instruction. This is the way of Victorian society. Everything has its place. Every word must be measured. It is not enough simply to know what to say. One must also know what not to say. Your father rustles the newspapers, the sound loud in the otherwise hushed room. The Times reports another debate in Parliament about the railway expansion. He remarks, more to himself than to anyone else. Always arguments about cost and progress. He folds the page back neatly, his voice calm, deliberate. His commentary is safe, suitable for breakfast conversation, public affairs, not private matters. A silver teapot rests nearby, Steam escaping from its spout, you pour yourself a cup, the dark liquid swirling as it fills the porcelain. A small jug of milk sits beside it, along with a bowl of sugar cubes. You add a touch of both, stirring gently so the spoon makes only the faintest clinks. Tea is not just a drink, it is the constant thread of Victorian daily life, a quiet comfort as much as a social symbol. The maid returns, offering preserves in small glass jars, strawberry, marmalade, quince. You accept a spoonful of marmalade for your toasts. Its sharp sweetness cuts through the heaviness of the other dishes, bright against the smoky taste of the city air that seems to linger on everything. Breakfast continues quietly, punctuated by the turning of newspaper pages, the scratching of your mother's pen, the muted clink of cutlery against porcelains. Conversation is minimal, but the silence itself carries meaning. In the Victorian household, restraint is its own form of communications. To speak little is to demonstrate self-control. To avoid complaint is to show disciplines. Yet, beneath the calm exterior lies a subtle performance. Every movement is observed, every action judged, even within the families. How you hold your fork, how you sip your tea, how long you remain seated, all a part of the unspoken codes. A slouch would suggest carelessness. A too hearty appetite might hint at indulgence. Refinement is measured not only by what you do, but by what you refrain from doing. When you have eaten enough to be polite, but no more, you set your fork down neatly across the plate and dab your lips with a folded napkin. Your corset makes the act of rising slightly awkward, so you wait until your mother closes her letter and your father folds his newspaper. At once, the meal is concluded. The servants move quietly to clear the table. Silverware is gathered, plates stacked, crumbs brushed away. Already the household turns toward the next tasks of the day. For you that means preparing for the morning call, a social ritual as precise and unforgiving as any dinner party. As you leave the dining room, you glance once more at the table, its orderliness, its quiet, its careful structure. Everything reflects the Victorian belief in discipline, in controls, in a world where propriety outweighs comfort. Even breakfast, simple though it may seem, is a stage upon which the rules of society are rehearsed daily. The door closes softly behind you. The clatter of dishes fades as the servants finish their work. Ahead lies the drawing room, where hours of needlework and conversation await. Yet even in the quiet repetition of stitching, the invisible rules will be there, shaping every gesture, guiding every word. For now, though, the day has begun. Properly dressed, properly fed, you are ready to step into the intricate dance of Victorian society. The carriage waits at the front of the house, its polished surface reflecting the pale morning light. The streets of London are alive now, vendors shouting their wares, children darting between carts. The distant rumble of wheels over cobblestone, echoing like a steady drumbeat. Yet within the carriage all is order and stillness, a small bubble of formality separating you from the chaos beyond. Today is reserved for morning calls. It is not leisure, though it may appear so from the outside. It is duty, obligation, and performance. A Victorian lady cannot neglect her social circles. Her presence must be felt, her courtesy displayed. To fail in this ritual is to risk being forgotten, excluded from invitations, whispered about in drawing rooms. You sit carefully upon the upholstered seat, your skirts arranged so that they spread gracefully but do not wrinkle. Your gloved hands rest lightly in your laps, a small card case tucked beside them. Within are your calling cards, stiff, cream-coloured pieces of card bearing your name in elegant scripts. They are not merely tokens, they are your introduction, your proof of respectability. A misplaced card or a failure to leave once could undo weeks of careful appearances. The horses set off, their hooves striking sharply against the stones. The air is cool, touched with the faint smell of coal smoke and damp earth. As the carriage turns down one street and then another, you observe the city passing by rows of terraced houses, each with its iron railings and neat steps, the occasional shop with its awnings, still being unfurled for the day. the swirl of skirts and coats as people hurry about their errands. Your first destination is the home of Mrs. Hartley and her daughter, newly engaged. It would be unthinkable not to acknowledge the occasions. Yet etiquette dictates that your call must not linger. 15 minutes, no more. Too short, and it may seem dismissive. Too long, and it may be considered a burden. Precision is everything. The carriage draws up before a neat townhouse. A servant opens the doors, and you step carefully onto the pavement, lifting your skirts just enough to avoid the mud. At the entrance, you present your cards. The butler accepts it with a nod, then leads you inside to the drawing room. Mrs. Hartley rises from her chair as you enter, her smile polite but restrained. Her daughter sits beside her, her cheeks flushed with the glow of recent betrothal. The conversation is soft, measured, congratulations offered, inquiries made, polite phrases exchanged like carefully rehearsed lines of a play. "How very fortunate," you remark gently, "that Mr. Edwards has such a fine position at the bank, and such a respectable family, too." The words are not spontaneous but expected, a small gift wrapped neatly in social convention. Tea is offered, and you accept, though only a sip passes your lips. A biscuit rests untouched upon the plate. To eat too eagerly would be vulgar. The talk continues, light and uncontroversial: the weather, the progress of spring flowers, the latest charity subscription. Each subject glides into the next, never lingering too long, never venturing into impropriety. After the appropriate span of time, you rise. "I thank you for your kindness," you say softly, offering another smile. You leave your card upon the tray as you depart, the crisp paper resting among others, a silent record of your visit. The Hartleys will take note of it later, their social ledger marked accordingly. Back in the carriage, you exhale slowly, though not so deeply as to disturb the fit of your corsets. The ritual has been performed successfully, yet there are still other visits to make. The carriage turns once more, carrying you toward another house, another drawing room, another carefully timed conversation. The rhythm of the morning repeats itself. A polite inquiry at one house, a brief condolence at another. You congratulate Mrs. Ellison on her son's new commission in the army. You express sympathy to Mrs. Green, who has been unwell. Each visit is brief, each one a thread in the tapestry of connection that binds Victorian society together. Sometimes you are received, other times you are not. When the lady of the house is not at home, whether truly absent or simply unwilling to receive, you leave your card with the servant and depart. It is understood. No offense is taken. The gesture alone is enough. By late morning, your card case is lighter. The streets grow busier. The sound of wheels and hooves blending into a ceaseless murmur. You watch as a flower seller calls out, her basket heavy with violets. A sweeps boy darts past, his face streaked with soot, his bare feet slapping against the stones. For them, the day is toil. For you, the day is duty of another kind, no less tiring, though it wears a different mask. At last, the carriage returns you home. The maid is waiting at the door to take your gloves and bonnet. Your mother inquires briefly whether all went well. You answer with a quiet nod. The details of each call matter less than the fact that they were made. Appearances have been upheld. Respectability has been maintained. You retreat to the drawing room, where the fire still burns and the quiet of the house wraps itself around you once more. On the table lies a book of poetry, beside it an unfinished piece of embroidery. The morning calls are over, yet the day's expectations continue. For in Victorian life, leisure is rarely leisure at all. It is a performance, a continual rehearsal of grace, discipline, and restraint. You rest your hands lightly upon the embroidery hoops, though for now your mind drifts elsewhere. The hum of carriage wheels still echoes faintly in your ears, a reminder of the endless rhythm of visits, cards, and carefully measured words. The morning is complete. The world has seen you, acknowledged you, and in turn, you have acknowledged it. And so, the great machinery of society turns quietly on. fueled not by force but by courtesy, ritual, and the delicate balance of appearances. The carriage has returned you safely home. The bustle of the streets and the delicate performance of morning calls are behind you now, replaced by the steady hush of the house. The air within feels warmer, softer, scented faintly of beeswax polish and the coal fire still glowing in the drawing room. A maid takes your cloak, folding it with careful precision. Another sets out a tray of light refreshments in case you are in need of tea. It is not yet afternoon, and the hours between morning calls and tea are reserved for what society deems suitable feminine pursuits. They are not chosen for pleasure, not entirely, though you may enjoy them. Instead, they are chosen for what they reveal about you. Your patience, your refinement, your discipline, and your ability to occupy yourself gracefully without ever appearing idle. For in Victorian thought, idle hands are the devil's workshop. To be seen sitting about, doing nothing, would invite whispers of laziness, or worse, moral weakness. Every moment must be filled, each hour accounted for, even in leisure. You take your place near the drawing room window, where pale light filters in through the lace curtains. Before you lies your embroidery hoops, a fine linen stretched taut, waiting for the touch of your needle. The design is floral, violets and roses winding delicately across the fabrics. It is not your own invention. Patterns are usually chosen from published guides, each stitch laid out in neat diagrams. Originality is not the goal. Perfection is. The needle slips easily between your gloved fingers. A thread of deep green silk winds through, glinting faintly in the light. Slowly, carefully, you draw it through the linen, forming the curve of a leaf. The rhythm is calming, almost meditative. In, out, pull tight, adjust, begin again. The hours pass with this gentle repetition, each stitch a small testament to your patience. Your mother sits across the room, her own embroidery in her laps. She works with the same steady precision, pausing only occasionally to sip from her cup of tea. The two of you do not speak much. Words are not needed. The quiet companionship, the shared task, is its own language. Nearby, a piano waits, its polished surface reflecting the faint glow of the fire. At some point, your sister moves toward it, arranging her skirts before sitting gracefully upon the stool. Her fingers rest lightly upon the keys, gloved only in the thinnest silks, and she begins to play. The melody is soft, an exercise more than a performance. Scales and arpeggios designed to train the hand and discipline the ear. Music is as essential to a Victorian lady's education as needleworks. Not for the sake of becoming a musician, but for demonstrating refinement, culture, and the ability to entertain politely when guests are present. A lady who could not play a little was considered lacking. A lady who played too much or too brilliantly was considered ostentatious. As with all things, moderation is the rule. You listen quietly as the notes drift through the room, blending with the steady rhythm of your needle. Outside, a carriage clatters by. The sound of hooves echoes briefly, then fades. Within these walls, time seems to stretch, measured not by minutes or hours, but by the slow progress of silk thread across fabric, and the soft rise and fall of scales upon the piano. After a time, you set aside your embroidery and reach for a book. The volume is small, bound in dark leather. The pages slightly yellowed with age. It is a collection of poetry, Wordsworth, perhaps, or Tennyson's. Poetry is considered appropriate reading for a lady, as are novels of a certain kind, moral, instructive, never scandalous. You open the book and let your eyes move across the lines, savoring the cadence of the words. Some verses are familiar, committed to memory long ago. Others are new, their imagery painting pictures in your mind of quiet streams, misty hills, and noble deeds. Books provide both instruction and escape, yet even here rules linger. Too much reading may be frowned upon, as it suggests idleness or indulgence. Certain novels, those deemed frivolous or improper, are firmly discouraged. The line between education and entertainment is thin, and you must tread it carefully. The hours pass with gentle rhythm. Needlework, music, reading, all perfectly suitable, all carefully chosen to reflect the proper character of a Victorian lady. Outside, the city bustles with noise and haste, but within, your world remains ordered and calm, a sanctuary of refinement. From time to time, a maid enters to tidy the room, adjusting the fire or setting a fresh vase of flowers upon the mantel. Her presence is quiet, efficient, almost invisible. The house itself seems to breathe in these moments of stillness, each room holding its own silence like a carefully folded garment. By early afternoon, you feel the weight of the hours gently upon you, not tiring but steadying. These pursuits may not demand great exertion, yet they leave their own kind of impression. The tapestry grows, the melody lingers, the words of poetry settle softly in your thoughts. Soon it will be time for tea, for another ritual of conversation and courtesy. But for now, you rest within the safety of the drawing room, your hands occupied, your mind soothed, your place within society quietly affirmed. The needle pauses in your hands. You gaze at the small cluster of roses you have stitched, their petals unfolding in threads of pale pink. Imperfect, perhaps, but graceful nonetheless. And with that, you allow yourself a small breath of satisfaction before turning once more to the quiet, patient work of being exactly what society expects you to be. The afternoon light slants through the tall windows of the drawing rooms, painting faint patterns on the carpet. The quiet hum of the house carries on around you, but your thoughts drift towards something less calm, something that makes your pulse quicken despite your best efforts to remain composed. For in Victorian society, courtship is not simply a matter of affection or desire. It is a ritual, a negotiation, a performance governed by rules as intricate as lacework. And you, like every young lady of your time, must learn to play this game with both skill and restraint. It begins with the smallest gestures. A glance held a fraction longer than necessary. A polite inquiry after someone's health, spoken with just enough warmth to suggest interest, but not so much as to cause gossip. In another world, love might bloom freely. Here, it is carefully pruned, shaped, and trained to grow within the boundaries society has built. Your thoughts return to Thomas Fairchild, the young man your mother mentioned only yesterday. You recall the dance at last season's ball, the way he bowed, the way his hand rested lightly, never too firmly, upon yours. His conversation had been gentle, thoughtful, nothing scandalous, nothing to invite whispers. And yet beneath the surface you'd felt a flicker of something more. A kindness in his eyes, a steadiness that lingered in your memory long after the music faded. But to admit as much would be unthinkable. Proper ladies do not confess affection, not even to their closest friends. Instead, you must show interest through silence, through restraints, through carefully controlled signals that could just as easily be explained away if questioned. To reveal too much would be to risk your reputation, perhaps your future. In the Victorian world, courtship is as much about families as individuals, your parents, his parents, the networks of connection that bind you all together. These are the unseen hands shaping the possibilities of your life. A young man might call upon your family, leaving his card with the butler. He might be received in the drawing rooms, where conversation would unfold under the watchful eyes of chaperones. Rarely would you find yourselves alone, and if you did, propriety would demand restraint, even distance. The rituals are strict. A gentleman may request a dance at a ball, but he must never request too many from the same lady, lest it seem improper. A lady may accept a small gift, a flower, a book, but never anything too personal, never jewelry, never anything that could imply an intimacy not yet sanctioned. Even the letters exchanged between prospective couples are measured, polite, their words carefully chosen to balance sincerity with formalities. For you, the very thought of a letter written in Thomas's hand is enough to stir your heart. Yet you know such a thing would pass first through the eyes of others, parents, siblings, servants, before it ever reached you. Privacy is a luxury rarely afforded in matters of love. This constant restraint is not without purpose. to a Victorian mind. Self-control is the highest virtue, proof of moral strength. Passion must be hidden, tempered, transformed into something respectable. A blush, a lowered gaze, a pause before answering. These become the language of affections. In a society where scandal could destroy a family's name overnight, the ability to conceal one's feelings was not simply desirable but necessary. And yet, beneath all the rules, love finds ways to declare itself. A gentleman might linger a moment longer than etiquette demands when handing you into a carriage. A lady might allow her eyes to meet his across a crowded room, holding the gaze before modestly looking away. These are the sparks that ignite beneath the surface, carried in silence, burning quietly but persistently. You imagine for a moment what it would be like to walk with Thomas in the garden, the spring air scented with lilacs, the gravel path crunching softly beneath your shoes. You would speak of neutral things, books, music, the weather, while both of you listened for something more in the cadence of the other's voice. Perhaps he would offer his arms, and you would accept, your gloved hand resting lightly upon his sleeve. A simple gesture, one that could be explained away, and yet to you, it would feel momentous. Such moments are rare, fleeting, and yet they sustain you through the quiet hours of needlework and poetry. Through the endless cycles of calls and visits. They are the secret undercurrent of your life. The quiet rebellion of the heart against the discipline of society. Your mother, ever watchful, is aware of this dance as well. She does not speak of it directly, but her questions, her remarks are carefully aimed. I hear the Fairchilds are hosting a dinner next week, she might say, her voice calm, her eyes measuring your reactions. You respond with restraint, a simple acknowledgement, never a smile too wide, never an eagerness too plain. It is a delicate balance, a performance of indifference hiding the truth of your hope. And so, courtship in the Victorian world continues, not with dramatic declarations or reckless gestures, but with quiet disciplines. It is a garden tended with patience, each step deliberate, each word measured, each silence as important as the things spoken aloud. By evening, as the lamps are lit and the day folds into its quiet close, you find yourself seated once more in the drawing room. The fire burns low, the sound of the city muffled beyond the windows. You take up your embroidery, though your stitches wander, your thoughts elsewhere. You imagine the next ball, the next dinner, the possibility of seeing Thomas again. You allow yourself the smallest smile, careful and fleeting, before returning to your work. For in this world of rules and restraint, even hope must be disguised, wrapped neatly in propriety. It's hidden in the silence between words. The morning begins quietly, with pale light filtering through lace curtains and the sound of carriage wheels rattling distantly on cobblestones. You are already dressed, your corset laced, your skirts arranged, your gloves buttoned. But today is not about balls or dinners. Today is about the smaller, subtler currents that run through Victorian society, the daily rituals of connection, of acknowledgement, of belongings. On the small table near the front door rests a polished leather case. Within it lie your visiting cards, neatly stacked, each one engraved with your name in elegant script. They are small things, thin slips of paper, and yet they carry immense weight. In this world of endless rules and unspoken codes, they are your passport to society, your proof of respectability, your token of presence. Without visiting cards, you are invisible. With them you are part of the great, intricate dance of calls and replies, of acknowledgements and reciprocations that knit Victorian communities together. Every visit, every social call begins and ends with these cards. You pick up the case and tuck it carefully into your reticule. Your mother does the same, her movements steady, practiced. She has lived within this system for decades and knows its rules as second nature. You, still learning, feel the faint weight of expectation pressing against your ribs, as if the corset were not already enough. At 11 o'clock sharp, you and your mother step into the street. The air smells faintly of coal smoke, softened by the morning damps. The maid has already brushed the soot from your cloaks, though it clings again as soon as you pass beneath the low, hanging chimneys. As the city hums around you, hawkers calling out their wares, a flower girl singing softly as she arranges violets, the rhythmic clop of horses drawing broughams toward wealthier avenues. Your first destination is the home of Mrs. Pembroke, a widow of impeccable reputation. You walk at a measured pace, careful never to appear rushed. To hurry would suggest a lack of dignity, a kind of carelessness unbecoming of a lady. Your steps are small, controlled, the swing of your skirts deliberate. When you arrive, the butler greets you with the quiet efficiency of his profession. You do not hand your card directly to Mrs. Pembroke, that would be unthinkably forward. Instead, you present it to the butler upon a small silver tray. He inclines his head and disappears briefly before returning with permission for you to enter. Already, the ritual has unfolded exactly as it should. Inside, the drawing room is arranged with perfect symmetry. 2 chairs angled by the fire, a low table set with china ornaments, a pianoforte polished until it gleams. Mrs. Pembroke rises gracefully to greet you. There are curtsies, polite words, the exchange of carefully measured compliments. The visit lasts precisely 15 minutes. You do not linger, though the conversation could easily stretch longer. To overstay would be a breach of etiquette, a sign of poor breeding. Back on the streets, your mother murmurs her approval. You have handled yourself well, and each successful call is another stitch in the fabric of your social standing. The day continues in this rhythm. House after house, door after door, card after card. Each visit is brief, formal, yet strangely significant. You begin to see how this endless exchange of cards and calls is less about the words spoken than the act itself. To visit is to honor. To leave a card is to acknowledge. To receive one is to be recognized. It is in essence the social heartbeat of the Victorian world. Sometimes a call is not received. The butler takes your card and informs you that the lady of the house is not at home. This phrase does not necessarily mean she is absent. It might mean she is simply unwilling to receive visitors that day. Yet the card remains, your presence recorded, your effort acknowledged. The balance of etiquette is maintained. In your case, most doors open, and the conversations are as predictable as the ticking of a clock. The weather, the latest sermon, a concert attended, an engagement noted. Nothing too personal, nothing too revealing. Yet beneath the surface, each interaction carries meaning. Who visits whom, how often, at what hour, all are read as signs of affection, respect, or distance. A card not returned is an insult. A visit too frequent, a sign of desperation. By the afternoon, you have mastered the rhythms. You remove your card case with practiced ease. Hand the slip to the butler with a steady hand. Curtsy with measured grace. Converse in moderate tones and take your leave precisely on time. Each moment is small, but together they form the invisible scaffolding of your reputation. As the day wanes, you and your mother return home. The air has grown heavier with smoke. The sound of street vendors fading as lamps are lit along the avenues. You set your card case back upon the hall table, the leather faintly warm from being held all day. The stack within it is thinner now, each card delivered like a thread woven into the social web that surrounds you. Seated once more in the quiet of the drawing room, you reflect on how strange it seems that so much weight is placed upon such small tokens of paper. And yet, in this society, they are everything. They are introductions, invitations, farewells. They are the difference between being included and being overlooked, between respect and disgrace. The fire crackles softly, casting its warm glow against the walls. You close your eyes for a moment, the image of your visiting card still vivid in your mind. So simple, so delicate, and yet so vital. They are the language of the Victorian days. The quiet signatures of belonging, proof that you are seen, remembered, acknowledged. And with that thought, the evening folds around you in calm silence, the rituals of the day complete. Evening has arrived, and with it, the most formal ritual of the Victorian household dinner. Not a quick meal, not a simple gathering for nourishment, but a carefully orchestrated performance where etiquette is as important as the food itself. The dining room is already glowing when you enter. Gas lamps cast their steady light against rich wallpaper patterned with vines and flowers. The long mahogany table gleams under layers of polish, each place set with precision. Silverware glints in the lamplight, crystal glasses stand waiting, and folded napkins rest like little sculptures atop porcelain plates rimmed with gold. Your father stands at the head of the table, dignified as always, newspaper folded away for the evening. Your mother takes her place at the opposite end, her posture perfect, her gown of muted silk arranged elegantly across her chair. Servants glide quietly between places, adjusting spoons by fractions of an inch, making sure every dish, every utensil is exactly as it should be. As you approach, you pause to wait. It is your father who signals when everyone may be seated, for the head of the household presides over the table as surely as a conductor leads an orchestra. Only when he inclines his head do you move to your chair, gather your skirts carefully, and sit with measured grace. Dinner begins, as always, with silence. Conversation does not erupt at once. It unfolds slowly, like the turning of a page. The servants present the first course. Perhaps clear soup with small pieces of bread, or oysters served on crushed ice. You take your spoons, careful to dip it away from yourself, never toward, and to sip quietly, noiselessly. Slurping, even the faintest sound of it, would be a humiliation not just for you, but for the family. Every movement is deliberate. Your hands never leave the edges of the tables. Your elbows, of course, never touch it. You sit upright, shoulders relaxed but straight, your napkins spread across your lap. When not in use, your knife and fork rest in neat parallel on the edge of your plate, never crossed, never carelessly dropped. Across from you, your younger cousin shifts nervously, glancing at his utensils. For in a Victorian dinner, there are many forks of different sizes, knives with varying blades, spoons designed for soup, for fish, for dessert. To use the wrong one is a mistake everyone will notice, though no one will mention aloud. The rule, unspoken but absolute, is to begin from the outside and work inward with each successive course. The second course arrives, perhaps a delicate fish dish, lightly seasoned and served with thin slices of lemon. You lift the special fish knives, with its curved edge, and move slowly, methodically. Conversation begins to stir now, low voices threading between the clink of silverware. Your mother asks a polite question about the latest performance at the theatre. Your father makes a measured remark about a recent political development, though his tone is neutral, his words carefully chosen. In Victorian society, dinner is not the place for argument or passion. Opinions, if expressed at all, are softened, restrained, offered with courtesy rather than force. To raise your voice would be a breach of manners. To speak too freely, almost unthinkable. The meal progresses through multiple courses. Roasted meats appear, carved by the servant with practiced hands. Vegetables arrive, boiled until tender, then arranged neatly in serving dishes. Potatoes, puddings, sometimes exotic delicacies imported from abroad. The abundance is meant not only to feed, but to display. A well-set table is as much about reputation as nourishment. You take small bites, never hurried, never greedy. Each portion is moderate, and though hunger tugs at your stomach, you pace yourself. For refinement lies not in indulgence, but in restraint. Between bites, you place your fork down, never speaking with food in your mouth. If a servant refills your glass of water or wine, you acknowledge with a nod. Never directly thanking during the act, it would break the silent rhythm of service. Dessert is its own ceremony. Crystal dishes of stewed fruit, custards, or delicate pastries are presented. The cutlery shifts again, smaller forks, slender spoons. You select only one or two items, though the table offers many. To appear too eager would suggest a lack of refinement. Finally, coffee and tea are brought in. Cups clink softly as they are placed on saucers, sugar and cream pass discreetly. The meal winds down, not with suddenness, but with the gentle decrescendo of music coming to an end. Throughout it all, the servants move quietly, almost invisibly, trained to anticipate without being noticed. The household's efficiency is judged as much by their seamless presence as by the family's decorum. And then, as the final cups are drained and the last conversations fade into silence, your father once again gives the signal. Chairs scrape back softly. Gowns rustle, and everyone rises together. The ladies withdraw to the drawing room, where lighter conversation and perhaps music awaits. The gentlemen linger, speaking in more serious tones, sometimes enjoying port or cigars. You step away from the tables, your hands smoothing your skirts as you walk. Your stomach is comfortably full, though not overfilled, and your mind hums with the careful balance of the evening. To an outsider, it may seem excessive, even exhausting, but within the rules lies a kind of calm order. Every gesture has its place, every silence its meaning, every detail its importance. Later, as you sit in the drawing room with the other ladies, the fire flickering low, and the sound of the city softened to a distant murmur, you reflect on the meal. Not just the flavors or the dishes, but the harmony of it. The choreography of manners, the discipline of restraint, the quiet dignity that turns eating into ceremony. And with that thought, you lean back against the sofa. The warmth of the fire wrapping around you like a shawl, the memory of silverware and candlelight fading gently into the soft rhythms of the night. After dinner, the ladies retire to the drawing rooms, leaving the gentlemen to their port and tobacco. The shift in atmosphere is immediate. The dining table with its solemn rituals, its careful silences, its restrained conversation is replaced with a lighter, almost playful mood. The drawing room is warm, firelight reflecting off gilt-framed mirrors, pale blue draperies, and a scattering of upholstered chairs. Lace doilies cover small tables. The air carries a faint mixture of scents, the beeswax polish from the piano, a lingering sweetness of rosewater from the ladies' gloves, and the ever-present coal smoke that creeps in through the chimney flue. You sink gracefully onto a settee beside your cousin Emily. The two of you exchange a glance, and in her eyes you see a spark of anticipation. Evening entertainment is not mere distraction. It is part of the unspoken code of Victorian society. Guests are expected to contribute. Music, readings, or light conversation are all ways of demonstrating one's refinement. At the far end of the room stands the upright piano, polished so carefully that the brass candle holders on either side reflect tiny glimmers of the firelight. Beside it rests a harp, tall and elegant, strings faintly golden in the glow. Sheet music is already arranged, pages neatly marked with ribbons. One of the younger ladies is asked, though it is more invitation than request, to play. She rises with modest reluctance, never too eager, and seats herself at the piano. Her gloved fingers remove the gloves one by one, folding them carefully into her laps, and then she begins to play. The melody is soft, flowing, familiar, a piece by Mendelssohn perhaps, or a waltz by Strauss, adapted for a single performer. The notes fill the room gently, never overwhelming, but rather weaving through the quiet like threads of silk. Conversation stills. Even those not particularly fond of music sit with pleasant expressions, heads tilted, body still. For in this moment, appreciation is as important as performance. When the song ends, applause is quiet but sincere. No loud clapping, only the polite rustle of gloved hands. The performer smiles modestly, not too widely, and returns to her seat as though embarrassed by her own accomplishment. Next comes a reading. A book of poetry, bound in deep green leather, is passed to your mother. She selects a passage from Wordsworth, her voice measured and calm, each line delivered with the kind of rhythm that makes words linger long after they are spoken. No one interrupts, no one fidgets. The room is attuned entirely to her voice, as though the fire itself leans closer to listen. When she closes the books, there is a pause, not rushed, not hurried, but deliberate silence, allowing the words to settle like mist. Only then does conversation resume, soft and meandering. Someone comments on the loveliness of the imagery. Another reflects briefly on a walk taken in the countryside the previous summer. Emily, your cousin, is called upon next. She rises with grace, moving toward the harp. Her gown swishes softly as she positions herself, back straight, fingers poised. With a delicate pluck, the first notes shimmer into the air, high and bright. The harp's music is unlike the piano's. It floats, almost ethereal, like a whisper from another world. You close your eyes for a moment and let the sound carry you, gentle, dreamlike, calming in a way that feels almost medicinal. After the harp, the gentlemen join from the dining rooms, carrying with them the scent of tobacco and port. Their mood is lighter now, their voices lower, softened by drink and good company. They slip seamlessly into the drawing room ritual, taking seats, nodding politely, listening with interest. Conversation spreads into small clusters. One group discusses a recent lecture at the Royal Institutions. Another marvels at the new gas lamps installed along certain London streets. The talk is cultured, never coarse, and always moderated. No one dominates, no one interrupts. It is a dance of words, each turn taken gracefully. You find yourself drawn into a circle near the fireplace. Someone asks if you might favor the company with a song. Your heart skips slightly, but refusal would be impolite. Rising, you approach the piano, fingers trembling slightly as you lift the lid and glance at the sheet music. A simple ballad catches your eye, familiar, not too ambitious. You begin to play, your voice soft but steady, weaving through the notes. As you sing, you feel the hush of the room settle upon you. Faces tilt toward you, eyes softened, expressions neutral but attentive. This is not performance in the modern sense. No cheering, no loud exclamations, but a moment of shared refinement, a demonstration that you, too, are versed in the accomplishments expected of a lady. When the final note fades, you bow your head modestly and return to your seats. The applause is soft, approving, and quickly fades back into the low hum of conversation. A tray of tea is brought in, cups clinking lightly, the sound blending seamlessly with the atmosphere of calm contentment. As the evening stretches, laughter begins to flow more freely. Not loud, not raucous, but gentle amusement at a witty remark, a softly told anecdote, a delicate observation. Time seems to move differently in the drawing room, slower, smoother, as though the fire itself dictates the rhythm. Eventually, the evening winds down. Guests stand smoothing their gowns and straightening their jackets. Farewells are exchanged with bows and curtsies. Words of gratitude, promises of future visits. No embraces, no handshakes, simply the graceful choreography of partings. When the door closes at last and the servants begin to extinguish lamps, you feel a pleasant heaviness in your limbs. The melodies linger faintly in your ears. The words of poetry echo softly in your thoughts. As you climb the stairs toward your room, the house growing quiet around you, the events of the evening settle into your memory not as spectacle, but as harmony. Music, poetry, conversation, all threads woven together into a tapestry of calm order, a reflection of a world where even leisure was shaped by rules, and where beauty lay in restraint. You slip between your sheets, the faint scent of coal smoke drifting in, your mind lulled by the memory of harp strings and piano keys. Outside, London sleeps, but within your dreams, the drawing room still glows with music and warmth. In the Victorian world, romance was not a matter of chance encounters or impulsive declarations. It was a deliberate, carefully structured game, played according to rules that were as rigid as they were invisible. To fall in love was one thing. To navigate the labyrinth of etiquette that surrounded courtship was another entirely. The morning sun drifts through the curtains of your bedroom, softened by the soot-stained glass. You sit at your dressing table as Mary, your maid, fusses with your hair, pinning each strand with ruthless precision. Today you are to accompany your mother on a social visit, one of those seemingly ordinary occasions that could, if fate permitted, shape the course of your future. Downstairs, the card case awaits, already filled with crisp visiting cards. Your mother reminds you, as she always does, to let her take the lead in introductions. For in Victorian societies, no lady could simply speak to a gentleman she had not been properly introduced to. Such encounters were not only frowned upon, they could end in whispers, scandal, and social disgrace. The carriage ride is brief, the wheels clattering over uneven cobblestones, the clip-clop of the horses steady as a heartbeat. Outside, London awakens in its usual haze of coal smoke and bustle, but inside the carriage silence reigns. Your mother sits upright, gloved hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes fixed on the window. Conversation is unnecessary, all that matters is what lies ahead. At the home of Mrs. Fairchild, you step carefully down from the carriage, your skirts lifted just enough to avoid the damp pavement. The butler ushers you into the drawing room, where familiar faces are already gathered. Some are acquaintances, others mere names whispered in passing, but all are part of the intricate web of society that binds every family together. Your mother greets Mrs. Fairchild warmly, the exchange practiced and precise. Pleasantries are traded, compliments are given, all without any true revelation. And then, at last, the moment of introduction arrives. Fairchild gestures toward her son. Thomas Fairchild, recently returned from Oxford, whose kind eyes you remember from a ball months ago. The formality begins. Your mother offers your name with measured dignity. He bows slightly, you curtsy, your gaze lowered. No handshake, no touch, only the faintest exchange of words. "It is a pleasure," he murmurs. "The pleasure is mine," you reply softly. That is all. That must be all. For now. Introductions are never the end, merely the beginning. What follows is a careful dance of appearances, watched by every pair of eyes in the room. You and Thomas do not speak directly again, not yet. Instead, conversation flows in groups, moving like a tide, drawing people together and apart. You hear his voice across the room, polite, attentive, always measured. You glance at him only once or twice, never long enough to suggest undue interest. Later, during tea, the opportunity arises. A remark about the weather, the most neutral of topics, allows a short exchange. He asks if you found yesterday's rain inconvenient. You answer politely, mentioning your embroidery by the fire. No laughter, no boldness, only courtesy. Yet beneath the words, beneath the restraint, there is something else. A quiet current, unspoken but undeniable. Victorian courtship was built upon such subtleties. No direct declarations, no bold advances. Instead, the language of romance was written in glances, in pauses, in the careful orchestration of proximity. A man might express interest by requesting permission to call upon the family. A woman, in turn, might signal acceptance simply by being present at the appointed time. Every step was deliberate, every gesture weighed for meaning. Back home, your mother remarks casually on Thomas's return. "He has grown into a fine young man," she says, though her tone is neutral, her words giving away nothing of her true opinion. You reply only with, "Indeed, Mama," careful not to betray the quickened beat of your heart. To show too much enthusiasm would be improper. To dismiss him too quickly would be unwise. Days pass, and with them, the rhythm of visits and calls. Sometimes you see Thomas at church, where he sits with his family, posture straight, hymn book in hand. Other times he appears at gatherings, always courteous, always appropriate. The moments you share are fleeting, never more than a few words, yet each lingers in your mind like the fading echo of a bell. Eventually, he requests permission to call. The ritual is exact. He sends his visiting card, addressed to your father. If your father places the card on the mantel, it signals acceptance. If the card is returned in an envelope, it is refusal. When you see Thomas's card displayed in the drawing room, your heart flutters, though your face remains composed. On the day of his visits, you sit in the parlour with your mother, embroidery in hand, feigning calm. When he arrives, he bows, you curtsy, and the conversation begins. Never alone, always under the quiet watch of your mother. Yet within those boundaries, there is space for words. He asks about your interests. You mention your fondness for music, the piano especially. He smiles faintly, says he has always admired the harps. A trivial exchange on the surface, yet in it lies the subtle weaving of connection. Courtship in this world is not passion unbound, but patience disciplined. It is the art of building trust within the strictest of frameworks, of learning to read meaning in silence, of finding warmth in glances that last only a heartbeat. And though it demands restraint, it also carries a strange beauty. For in a society where everything is controlled, even the smallest gesture, a smile, a compliment, a shared word feels like something rare and precious. As the evening draws to a close, Thomas takes his leave, his bow deep, his words soft. Until next time, he says, and your mother nods in quiet approval. When the door closes, you sit back against the sofa, your embroidery forgotten on your lap, your thoughts drifting not to what was said, but to what was left unsaid. In the flickering lamplights, with the sounds of the household settling around you, you realize that love, in the Victorian sense, is not a sudden flame but a slow, careful fire, and in that warmth, tightly bound though it may be, there is comfort, there is promise, there is the possibility of something lasting, built not on haste, but on patience. Its life in a Victorian household was not sustained by its masters alone. Behind every polished surface, every well-set tables, every carefully orchestrated social events, there existed an unseen force, a network of servants whose labor kept the great machine of domestic life turning. Without them, the household would falter. With them, it appeared effortless, as though order and refinement were the natural state of things. It begins before dawn. While you still lie nestled in your horsehair mattress, your maid Mary is already awake, pulling on her simple uniforms, lighting a candle and hurrying down to the kitchen. The servant's day begins long before the family stirs. Fires must be stoked, coals carried, water drawn, boots polished. The quiet industry of their hands prepares the world you wake into. By the time you ring the small bell at your bedside, Mary is ready. She appears almost instantly, as though she has been standing just outside the door all along. She greets you politely, but not warmly. Familiarity is not part of her roles. She helps you dress, fastens the buttons you cannot reach, tightens your corset with practiced pulls. She does not complain, she does not sigh. Her own back aches from early labor, yet she moves with quiet efficiency, never once stepping out of the shadow her position requires. Downstairs, the hierarchy of service is as rigid as that of society above. At the top stands the butler, stern and composed, overseeing the male staff, footmen, coachmen, stable boys. Beside him in rank is the housekeeper, who governs the female staff with equal authority. Beneath them, the hierarchy cascades downward, each servant with their own precise roles. The cook presiding over the kitchen, scullery maids scrubbing endlessly, parlour maids dusting and polishing, errand boys carrying messages through the soot-filled streets. Every task is scheduled, every action bound by routines. Servants are trained to be invisible. They move silently, entering a room only when necessary, withdrawing before they can be noticed. If they must pass through a corridor at the same time as the family, they step aside, eyes lowered. Their presence is constant, yet designed to feel absent, like the steady tick of a clock in the background. Meals illustrate their craft most clearly. Hours of preparation go into every dish that appears on the table. Ingredients purchased at the market in the early morning are chopped, simmered, and baked under the cook's sharp eye. The scullery maid scrubs pans until her hands are raw, while the footman polishes silver until it gleams like mirrors. When the bell rings for dinner, the servants glide into place, serving each course in silence, retreating before a glance can linger on them too long. And yet, for all their invisibility, the household depends upon them utterly. Without the maid, your gowns would remain unfastened. Without the footman, the heavy coal scuttles would go unfilled. Without the coachman, the carriage wheels would never turn. The grandeur of Victorian life rests on their labour. yet their own existence is lived in the margins, their beds narrow, their food plains, their leisure hours few. Still, there is a quiet dignity to their world. Among themselves in the servants' hall below stairs, they share laughter, stories, songs hummed while polishing brass or kneading dough. They know each other's burdens, carry each other's weariness. Though society above scarcely acknowledges them, they create their own bonds, their own small joys in the brief hours when the day's work is done. Mary, your maid, is careful never to confide in you, but you sometimes catch a glimpse of her humanity, a fleeting smile when she thinks you are not looking, a softness in her voice when she speaks of her younger brother who works as a messenger. In those moments, you realize how close and yet how far your lives are, bound together by the same roof, but separated by unbridgeable rules. The rules of service are not written, yet they are ironclad. A servant must never contradict a family member, never speak unless spoken to, never display emotion beyond polite attentiveness. They rise early, they retire late, and in between, they exist in a liminal space, present but not acknowledged, vital but often overlooked. When guests come to court, the servant's choreography becomes even more intricate. The butler takes visiting cards on a silver tray. The footman opens doors at just the right moment. The maid ensures no speck of dust dares show itself in the drawing rooms. Every detail must suggest perfection, for the reputation of the family rests on the labor of those who must never step too far into view. As evening falls, the servants continue their quiet work while you retire upstairs. Fires must be banked for the night, doors locked, lamps extinguished. The last footsteps echo softly on the servants' staircase long after the family has gone to bed. Only then, in their own quarters, do they sit for a simple supper of bread and cheese, perhaps a cup of weak tea, before collapsing into narrow beds for a few short hours of rest. Lying in your own room, the sheets crisped, the faint scent of bergamot still clinging to your handkerchief, you think of Mary and the others. You think of their unending labor, their quiet dignity, their lives lived in service. The world you inhabit feels effortless only because theirs is ceaseless. And though society will rarely name them, they remain the invisible heartbeat of the Victorian household. As your eyes grow heavy, the soft crackle of the fire beside you becomes indistinguishable from the imagined rustle of footsteps on the servants' stairs. You drift into sleep carried by the thought that even in dreams their presence remains. A quiet, constant rhythm, the hidden foundation of everything above. The day begins with the rustle of fabric, the quiet snap of laces pulled taut, and the faint scent of starch lingering in cotton and linen. In the Victorian world, clothing is never simply clothing. It is statement, status, discipline, and identity all at once. Every thread stitched into your garments carries weight. Every fold of fabric whispers a rule of its own. You rise from your bed, the air still cool in the chamber, and already your maid Mary is waiting with today's attire. So, lady of your standing does not simply get dressed. Dressing is a ritual, an unspoken dialogue between fabric and society. What you wear is not a matter of preference, it is a declaration, carefully observed by every eye you will encounter today. The first layer is the chemise, a simple cotton slip worn close to the skin. Its purpose is practical, protecting your finer garments from sweat and oils. Yet even this hidden piece is considered essential to respectability. So over it goes the corset, stiffened with whalebones, drawn tightly until your breath grows shallow and your waist narrows to the desired silhouette. The corset is not merely fashion, it is discipline embodied, a constant reminder of restraint and order. Layer upon layer follows. Petticoats, heavy with lace and starch, add volume and modesty. Then comes the crinoline, a cage of steel hoops that spreads your skirts into a perfect belt, demanding space even as your own body is confined. Finally, the gown itself, chosen with care according to the time of day and the occasions. Morning dresses are lighter in color and less adorned, suitable for household duties or receiving visitors. Afternoon dresses, darker and more formal, speak of dignity. Evening gowns shimmer with silk and velvet, designed to catch the flicker of candlelight at a ball. Colors carry their own subtle meanings. A deep blue suggests seriousness, a soft cream whispers innocence, a jet black gown declares mourning. Even ribbons and trims are not mere decoration, but signals, silent codes that those around you understand instinctively. To wear bright scarlet in the morning would be a breach of taste, as startling as shouting in church. Accessories complete the unspoken conversation. Gloves are non-negotiable, bare hands in public are unthinkable. A bonnet shields your face from both the sun and improper stares. Jewelry is chosen with caution. Too much suggests vulgarity, too little hints at poverty. A simple brooch at the collar, a delicate chain resting just below the throat. Such pieces speak volumes without ever raising a voice. For men, the rules are no less demanding, though quieter in their expression. The cut of a coat, the stiffness of a collar, the shine on a pair of boots, all mark a gentleman's rank and refinement. A top hat in the afternoon signals confidence and respectability, while a walking cane, whether necessary or not, becomes an emblem of poise. Fashion in this world is not only about beauty, it is about boundaries. Clothing separates the classes as firmly as walls. The working maid wears sturdy cotton, her hands roughened by labor, her skirts plain and narrow. The factory worker's garments smell of smoke and oil, cut for function, not display. A fine lady's gown, by contrast, is impractical by design. The weight of her skirts, the delicacy of her fabrics, the limitation of her corset, all proclaim that she does not labor, that her body is devoted not to work, but to the performance of refinement. And beneath it all lies symbolism deeper still. The corset becomes a metaphor for society itself, shaping the individual into the rigid expectations of the whole. The crinoline, spreading wide and unyielding, mirrors the vast presence of propriety, a barrier that protects and isolates at once. Even the act of dressing, with its many layers and dependencies, is a daily reminder of how entangled life is with rules unseen yet always felt. As you descend the staircase, skirts swaying with each step, you feel the weight of it all, literally and figuratively. 15 pounds of fabric and steel press upon your frame, yet they also elevate you in the eyes of others. A passerby will not see the strain of your breath or the ache in your ribs. They will see only dignity, composure, elegance. That is the power of Victorian fashion, to conceal effort beneath appearance, to make restraint itself into beauty. At the midday promenades, the rules grow even sharper. Ladies circle the park in pairs, their gowns sweeping the gravel paths. Parasols tilted just so to shield their pale skin. Each outfit is judged, each choice of color noted. A new ribbon may spark whispers of admiration, while a mismatched glove might ignite murmurs of ridicule. The promenade is less a stroll and more a living exhibition, a stage upon which fashion performs its silent play. Even in mournings, fashion dictates exact expression. After a death, women wear black for set periods, first in heavy crepe, later in softer fabrics, before gradually shifting to muted greys and lavenders. To return to color too soon is scandalous. To remain in black too long suggests clinging to grief. Mourning attire is not simply personal, it is public, a visible acknowledgement of duty to both the departed and to society. Back at home, as Mary carefully unfastens the layers, you reflect on how exhausting this silent language can be. Yet there is comfort in it, too. The rules are strict, but they provide certainties. You know what to wear, how to appear, what message your clothing conveys without words. In a world of unyielding social codes, fashion becomes both burden and guide. At last, freed from the weight of gown and corset, you sink into a chair in your dressing room. Your chemise feels impossibly light after the layers have been removed. The faint pressure marks on your skin remind you of the hours spent confined, but the relief is gentle, almost soothing. Outside, the lamps of London flicker in the gathering dusk, their light catching the silhouettes of men in dark coats and women in pale bonnets moving along the street. Each one, like you, wrapped in fabric that is more than fabric, clothed in meaning, in restraint, in the unspoken poetry of Victorian fashion. You close your eyes, and the whisper of skirts becomes a lullaby, the weight of symbolism settling into calm. Fashion, for all its rules and rigidities, becomes another layer of the rhythm that carries you through the day, steady and composed into the embrace of night. The drawing room is quiet, save for the faint tick of the mantel clock and the occasional crackle from the coal fire. Afternoon lights, soft and filtered through lace curtains, lays across the carpet in pale golden squares. You sit with your embroidery in hands, carefully stitching, though your mind is not entirely on the task. Courtship, an intricate, unspoken dance of glances, silences, and gestures, lurks in your thoughts. In the Victorian world, romance is never rushed, never loud, never reckless. It is controlled, almost choreographed, a delicate ritual observed as carefully as a religious rite. Love may stir beneath the surface, but propriety binds it, shaping every expression into something subtle and restrained. Your mother sits nearby, engaged in her own needleworks, her eyes occasionally lifting to study you, though she says nothing. Mothers in this society are both guardians and guides in the dance of courtship. Their approval is essential, their guidance a constant presence, sometimes comforting, sometimes stifling. A lady's heart may flutter at the thought of a gentleman's, but it is her mother who determines whether those flutterings will ever find their way into marriage. The rules begin long before feelings do. A young woman must never appear eager. Interest must be cloaked in modesty, affection hidden beneath layers as carefully as a corset beneath a gown. A gentleman, meanwhile, must be introduced formally before even the simplest exchange of words is permitted. A chance meeting on the street, a shared glance across a park, these are not enough. Until names are exchanged by proper hands, you and he remain strangers. Thomas Fairchild comes to mind again, the young man you once danced with before he departed for Oxford. You remember his kind eyes, the steady way he led you across the floor, how he listened rather than spoke too much. It was only a dance, nothing more. Yet the memory lingers, returning to you in quiet moments like this one. Courtship, in its earliest stage, often begins with such dances, carefully supervised by mothers, fathers, and watchful chaperones. The ballroom is a stage where potential unions are rehearsed. Every step of the waltz is an opportunity to observe. How does the gentleman hold himself? Does he move with grace? Does he speak with wit yet without boastfulness? The dance is not just entertainment. It is evaluation cloaked in music and motions. But even beyond the ballroom, there are small exchanges that carry enormous weight. A visiting card left at the doors. A gentleman tipping his hat as you pass in the park. A compliment, brief and understated, offered in the presence of others. Each act is a thread in the tapestry of courtship, delicate and precise. Letters, too, play their part, but not at once, not boldly. A gentleman may first send word to your father, seeking permission to correspond. Only then might a note, carefully worded and sealed in wax, find its way into your hands. And even then, its tone will be modest, cautious, almost businesslike. Open declarations of love are not permitted in these early stages. Instead, the letters speak of weather, of books read, of sermons attended. But between the lines, hidden in choice of word or in the flourish of a pen, affection breathes quietly. Flowers hold their own secret language. A rose might symbolize love, but to send one directly could be too forward. A gentleman might instead send violets, symbols of modesty and faithfulness, or forget me nots which whisper of remembrance. Every bloom carries a meaning, and every bouquet is a coded message waiting to be deciphered. To receive flowers is to receive not just beauty, but sentiment cloaked in petals. Yet for all the rules, true feelings cannot always be con hey there and welcome back. Tonight, we'll be exploring another chapter of history, told slowly, calmly, and with all the little details that make it both fascinating and just boring enough to help you drift off to sleep. If you enjoy these sleepy history stories, a like or subscribe really helps more people find them. I also love knowing where you're listening from, so feel free to leave a comment with your location and the time where you are. It's always amazing to see how people all around the world are falling asleep to these stories. Now let's settle in, get comfortable, and begin sealed. A glance held a moment too long, a blush rising unbidden. The faint tremor of a hand. These betrayals of emotion slip past even the most practiced restraint. And it is in these small, almost imperceptible moments that courtship truly lives, more than in formal visits or carefully penned notes. Still, danger lies in missteps. Too much attention shown too quickly may brand a lady as forward, her reputation stained. Too little, and the gentleman may drift elsewhere, his interest assumed to be lacking. The balance is delicate, like walking a narrow path between shadow and light. And always society watches. Neighbors whisper, mothers calculate, fathers observe. Love in this era is not only between two hearts, it is a negotiation between families, between fortunes, between reputations. You think again of Thomas, of how your mother's eyes had lingered when she mentioned his returns. Did she approve? Did she hope for something to bloom there? Or was she merely testing your composure? In this game of restraints, even your mother's words may be carefully chosen, their true purpose hidden beneath a veneer of casualness. Evenings bring opportunities for further encounters. A dinner, a musicale, perhaps even another ball. In the soft glow of candlelights, seated across from one another, conversation flows within its strict boundaries. No politics, no scandal, no unseemly jokes. Instead, discussions of books, of art, of travel fill the air. Beneath the surface, though every sentence carries another weight, is he attentive? Is she modest? Are they well matched not only in fortune but in spirit? Courtship is, above all, a performance. Yet within its structure, genuine feelings may quietly bloom. Couples have found true affection amidst the rules, hearts learning to speak in whispers where shouts are forbidden. And perhaps that is part of its power, that love discovered slowly, carefully, within restraint, grows not with haste but with steadiness. As the day draws to a close, you retire once more to your chamber. Mary unlaces your corset, and your breath deepens with relief. You think of the dances yet to come, of the conversations that may be shared, of whether letters will one day arrive with your name written in steady hand. Courtship is exhausting in its complexities, but also strangely comforting. The rules may confine, but they also protect, ensuring that when love finally finds its place, it has passed the tests of patience, propriety, and persistence. You close your eyes, the quiet tick of the clock, once again marking times. In your mind, the waltz begins anew, candlelight gleaming, gowns swirling, and somewhere across the room, the steady gaze of a gentleman you cannot help but notice. Courtship may be a game of silence, but in its silence, dreams take roots. The morning sun filters through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across the parlor floor. Outside, the rumble of carriage wheels and the clop of hooves remind you of the bustling world beyond. Yet within these walls, the life of a Victorian woman unfolds, a life shaped not merely by choice but by rules, expectations, and roles passed down from one generation to the next. In this society, women are defined less by who they are than by the positions they occupy: daughter, sister, wife, mother. Each role carries its own duties, its own boundaries, its own quiet form of dignity. From the moment a girl is born, her path is guided by invisible threads, spun from propriety and duty, binding her gently but firmly to a pattern as old as the era itself. As a daughter, her early years are spent learning. Not learning in the sense that boys do, with Latin and mathematics at schools, but learning the arts of refinement. Piano lessons fill her mornings, needlework her afternoons. A governess might teach her French phrases, or correct her posture as she walks across the room balancing a book upon her head. Education for girls is never about ambition. It is about preparation, about shaping her into a suitable lady for the home she will one day keep. As she grows older, she is introduced into society. Here her role shifts to that of potential wife. Every ball attended, every call paid. Every stroll in the park is part of the unspoken search for a husband. It is not considered mercenary, but natural. A woman's future is entwined with marriage. Her security and her place in society are tied to the family she joins. For most, this path is not a question of if, but when. Once married, her world narrows. The Victorian ideal of womanhood is the angel in the house. Gentle, pure self-sacrificing. A wife is expected to manage the household with grace, ensuring order and comfort. She is not idle. Her work may be invisible, but it is constant. She directs the servants, organizes meals, maintains correspondence, and oversees the upbringing of children. Her life is woven into the rhythms of domesticity, the heart of a home that beats quietly behind its brick facade. Motherhood, too, is a role heavy with both joy and responsibility. A Victorian mother must raise her children with discipline and moral strengths. She is affectionate, but not indulgent. She teaches not only through words but by example, modeling the restraint, modesty, and respectability that society values above all else. Even the lullabies sung to infants, the prayers whispered at bedtime, carry the weight of duty and propriety. But not all women's lives follow this same script. For those of the working classes, the role is harsher, more demanding. A maid rises before dawn, her hands raw from endless scrubbing. A factory girl spends long hours in choking air, her wages meager yet essential for her family's survival. These women, too, fulfill roles, though theirs are often overlooked by the polite world. Their sacrifices are quieter, yet no less vital to the machinery of Victorian societies. There are also women who push against the boundaries. Writers, thinkers, reformers. Figures who question why education should be denied, why women should not vote, why the home must be their only sphere. They are few in number, often ridiculed or dismissed, but their voices stir change, subtle at first, then growing stronger as the century wears on. Behind the strict lace of Victorian order, the seeds of transformation are being sown, yet for the majority, conformity is comfort. To embrace the role society assigns is to be safe, secure, respected. A woman who fulfills her duties without question is praised as virtuous, while one who strays too far risks whispers, gossips, even scandal. Reputation is fragile, and women, more than men, bear the weight of its preservation. Even in leisure, roles are present. When you sit in the drawing room, working on embroidery, while your mother pens letters, you are not merely passing the time. You are embodying the ideal of quiet productivity, showing that your hands and mind are never idle. When you walk slowly through the park, bonnet shading your face, you are not simply enjoying the air, you are performing modesty, dignity, and grace. Every action is part of the roles. Every gesture a note in the larger symphony of society. And yet, within these confines, women find their strengths. They master the art of subtle influence, guiding households, shaping the character of children, even steering the decisions of husbands, all without stepping beyond the boundaries set before them. Their voices may be soft, but they are steady, carrying power in ways often unseen. As the day wanes, you reflect on how deeply these roles permeate lives. They are burdensome at times, limiting, even stifling. But they also provide structure, meaning, and identity. To be a Victorian woman is to live within rules, but also to find grace, resilience, and quiet power inside them. The mantel clock chimes, marking the hour. Outside, the lamps are being lit, their glow scattering the gathering dusk. You close your embroidery case and rise, smoothing your gown. Tomorrow will bring another day of duties, another day of restraint and composure. But tonight, as you prepare for rest, you feel the strength of generations of women before you, each fulfilling her roles, each adding her own quiet note to the unending music of society. You exhale slow and steady, and let the calm embrace of sleep draw near. The grandfather clock in the hallway strikes 8, its heavy chime echoing through the house. morning has begun, and with it comes the routine of a Victorian gentleman's day. Unlike the carefully confined life of a lady, a man's role stretches further, reaching beyond the domestic walls into the worlds of politics, commerce, and public life. Yet his life, too, is bound by rules, less visible perhaps, but no less powerful. Masculinity in the Victorian age is measured not by strength alone, but by composure, industry, and moral uprightness. A man is expected to be firm, rational, and controlled. He is the head of the household, the provider of income, the one whose name carries weight in contracts, in legal matters, in society. His authority is unquestioned, yet it comes with expectations that weigh heavily upon his shoulders. The day begins at the breakfast table. A gentleman appears punctually, dressed in a well-pressed suit, his cravat neatly tied. A newspaper rests beside his plate, filled with the news of Parliament debates, shipping reports, and foreign affairs. He may speak little during the meal. Conversation is often measured and restrained, but his presence itself sets the tones. His wife and children defer to him, his authority understood without need of constant assertion. After breakfast, his duties pull him outwards. For some, it is to the office or counting house, where ledgers are balanced and business is transacted. For others, it may be to the law courts, the university, or even the halls of government. A man's profession is central to his identity. Industry, commerce, and progress are the proud engines of the Victorian age, and to contribute to them is to embody masculine virtue. Yet work alone is not enough. A gentleman is also expected to be a man of principle. Honesty, punctuality, and restraint are praised as manly virtues. Gambling, drunkenness, and idleness are condemned as vices that erode both character and reputation. The stiff upper lip is more than a phrase. It is the core of Victorian masculinity. Emotion must be mastered, never indulged. A man does not weep in public, nor does he give way to temper. His composure is his armor, his respectability his crown. Appearance, too, matters. A well-groomed beard, polished boots, a carefully tailored suit. These signal his place in society as clearly as a lady's gown does for her. A top hat, tall and gleaming, is almost obligatory in public, marking him as a figure of dignity. Even the simple act of carrying a walking stick is more than practicality. It is a symbol of control and presence. In leisure, men find spaces designed for them alone, the gentleman's clubs, with its dark wood paneling and quiet rooms filled with cigar smoke, offers a retreat where politics, science, and literature may be discussed without the presence of women. The tavern, too, serves as a gathering place, though of a different character, livelier, more convivial, yet still firmly male territory. Hunting, cricket, rowing, and other sports reinforce ideals of vigor and endurance, physical expressions of the discipline that defines manhood. At home, however, the gentleman occupies a different role. He is patriarch, guiding his household with firm but fair authority. His word carries weight in decisions great and small, though much of the household's daily management falls to his wife. To be a good husband and father is not merely to provide, but to model moral integrity. Children are expected to look up to him as the embodiment of discipline and self-control. Public displays of affection may be rare, but his duty as protector and guide is unquestioned. For men of the working classes, masculinity is measured differently. Their strength is literal, expressed through long hours of physical labor in factories, on docks, or in fields. A man's pride may rest in the muscles of his arms, in the endurance of his back, in the wages he brings home at the week's end. Here, masculinity is tied not to polished boots and parliamentary debates, but to the ability to endure hardship with resilience. Still, across classes, the threads of expectation remain the same. A man is to be steady, reliable, and self-controlled. He must guard his family's honor, advance its fortune, and keep his own name free from scandals. To fail in these duties is not merely personal. It is a stain upon the family. It's a shadow that lingers in the whispers of neighbors and colleagues alike. Yet even as men uphold these rigid ideals, they are not immune to the quiet weight of them. The demand for unshakable composure can be exhausting. The burden of providing, of never faltering, rests heavily on many shoulders. But in the silence of their studies, in the privacy of their clubs, or in the quiet companionship of trusted friends, some men allow themselves a glimpse of vulnerability, rare, fleeting, but profoundly human. As evening falls, the gentleman returns home. Dinner is formal, candles flickering across polished silver and porcelain plates. Conversation is restrained but steady. Children may be called upon to recite their lessons. Wives may share the day's news of household affairs, but always under the calm gaze of the patriarch. Afterward, he may retire to his studies, the air thick with tobacco, as he writes letters or reads by lamplight, the steady scratch of pen on paper marking the final hours of his days. And so the cycle continues. Masculinity in Victorian times is not a matter of loud gestures or reckless displays. It is measured, controlled, and constantly observed. To be a man is to embody steadiness, to master both self and circumstance, to wear authority as naturally as one wears a well-fitted coat. The lamps flicker lower, and outside, the gaslights glow along the cobblestone streets. In the hush of evening, you sense the weight of these expectations, both burden and honor, shaping the men of this age. They too are bound by rules, their strength measured not in freedom but in restraint. You exhale, imagining the quiet rhythm of boots along a pavement, the firm grip of a gloved hand upon a walking stick, the calm composure of a gentleman in the glow of lamplight. The day closes, and with it, the steady figure of Victorian manhood fades into dreams. The first light of morning slips through tall windows, filtered by lace curtains that soften the edges of the day. In the nursery, a bell has already been rung, and footsteps hurry along the corridors. Childhood in Victorian times is not the carefree chapter of life you may imagine. It is shaped, like every other stage of existence, by duties, expectation, and the invisible hand of social rules. A child's day begins not with play, but with preparations. For children of the upper and middle classes, a governess or nanny oversees their morning routine. Faces are washed briskly in cold water, hair neatly brushed, and clothing adjusted with precision. Boys are dressed in sailor suits or short jackets, symbols of both discipline and innocence. Girls wear pinafores over their dresses, white and spotless, ready for the lessons and manners that lie ahead. Even at the youngest age, a child's appearance is expected to reflect the respectability of the family. Breakfast is taken in the nursery or dining room. Porridge, bread, and perhaps a soft boiled egg form the staple. Conversation is gentle, often led by a parent or governess, reminding children of the importance of polite words and measured tones. The rules of society reach them early. Speak only when spoken to. Sit up straight and never interrupt. Each bite of food, each small gesture, becomes part of the lifelong training in proper conducts. Education varies greatly depending on class and gender. Boys of wealthier families may be sent to public schools, though in Victorian usage. These are elite private institutions like Eton or Harrow. There, days are governed by a rigid timetable of Latin, Greek, mathematics, history, and scripture. Discipline is strict, sometimes harsh, with punishments delivered swiftly for the smallest of infractions. Yet these schools produce the men destined for positions of leadership in politics, the army, and the church. Girls, in contrast, are more often taught at home. A governess is their constant guide, instructing them in reading, writing, French, music, and drawings. Arithmetic is kept modest. Too much intellectual ambition in a young lady is frowned upon. Instead, emphasis is placed on the accomplishments, skills that make a woman pleasing in society. The ability to play piano, to sketch flowers, to converse in polite French, and to sew delicate patterns all serve as markers of refinement. Even when intellect shines brightly, it must be tempered with modesty. For children of working-class families, the picture is starkly different. Many rise before dawn to join their parents in factories, mines, or fields. Small hands are prized for fitting into tight machinery, small bodies for crawling into narrow mine shafts. Childhood here is brief, often swallowed by labor. Though laws slowly emerge throughout the 19th century to restrict child labor and require basic schooling, enforcement is uneven. For many, education is a luxury overshadowed by the need to earn wages. Still, even among the working classes, schoolrooms begin to appear. Charity schools and ragged schools open their doors to children who otherwise would never learn to read or write. In these plain halls, chalk dust floats in beams of sunlight as lessons in spelling and scripture echo against bare walls. For a child, the chance to trace letters upon a slate is a step toward a broader world, though their schooling may last only a few years before necessity pulls them back into labor. Play is not absent from Victorian childhood, though it too carries rules. In wealthy homes, toy soldiers, rocking horses, and dolls provide amusement. Board games teach strategy and patience. Outdoor play may include skipping rope, battledore, or croquet. Yet even at play, children are expected to practice restraint. Roughness is discouraged, noise frowned upon. Play is gentle, controlled, a rehearsal for the measured adulthood awaiting them. For poor children, play is simpler: sticks, hoops, marbles, and whatever imagination can make of scraps. Streets and alleyways become their playgrounds, filled with laughter despite the shadows of hardship. The games may lack polish, but they carry the same spirit of childhood, moments of joy snatched between the duties of survival. Discipline is ever present. To spare the rod is considered to spoil the child, and corporal punishment is widely accepted. A stern word, a sharp glance, or a strike from a cane serves as correction. The purpose is not cruelty but control, instilling obedience and respect. Children are reminded constantly of their place in the hierarchy of the household, below parents, elders, and authorities. Respect for order is the foundation upon which their adult lives will be built. Religion, too, shapes childhood. Morning prayers, Sunday services, and catechism lessons instill not only faith, but also moral discipline. Children learn hymns by heart, recite scriptures, and are reminded of virtues like humility, honesty, and industry. Heaven and hell are described vividly, the promise of salvation and the fear of damnation both serving to guide behavior. As evening falls, the nursery once again fills with quiet ritual. Supper is taken early: bread, milk, perhaps a slice of pudding. Stories may be read aloud, often moral tales that reinforce duty and kindness. Then comes bedtime. Candles are dimmed, curtains drawn, and small voices murmur prayers before slipping beneath heavy blankets. Outside, the streets may echo with carriage wheels or the cries of vendors, but within the nursery, order and calm prevails. Victorian childhood is thus a paradox. For the fortunate, it is sheltered yet disciplined, filled with lessons and accomplishments but limited in freedom. For the less fortunate, it is brief and burdened, shadowed by labor and poverty. Yet in both, the thread of expectation is strong. Children are not viewed as free spirits, but as adults in training, shaped, molded, and prepared for the intricate world of Victorian society. And as the house settles into night, the nursery grows quiet. Small breaths rise and fall, dreams unfolding beneath patchwork quilts. Childhood, whether privileged or impoverished, carries the same rhythms. Moments of innocence against the backdrop of duty, fleeting glimpses of play against the steady march toward adulthood. You close your eyes with them, imagining the faint glow of lamplight on toys, the rustle of skirts as a governess extinguishes a candle, the whispered prayers drifting into the dark. Victorian childhood, both tender and strict, lingers like a memory, shaping lives long after the nursery doors are closed. The bells of Sunday morning ring out across London, their tones drifting through fog and coal smoke, calling the faithful to worship. In Victorian England, religion is not simply a matter of personal belief, it is the foundation of daily life, shaping habits, manners, and even the quiet thoughts that unfold before sleep. For the upper and middle classes, Sunday begins with careful preparations. Clothing is chosen with solemn attention to modesty and respectability. A gentleman's frock coat is brushed clean, a lady's bonnet tied neatly beneath her chin, children dressed in starched collars and tidy pinafores. No detail is too small. One's appearance in church is both an expression of piety and a declaration of social standings. The walk to church is deliberate and composed. Families move in measured steps along cobbled streets, carriages rattling past with polished wheels. Churches themselves rise above the city and countryside alike, their spires pointing heavenwards, their stained glass glowing like jewels against grey skies. Entering the cool hush of the naves, worshippers are greeted by the scent of wood polish, candle wax, and centuries of stone. The Anglican service dominates much of Victorian life, though other traditions, Methodist, Baptist, Catholic, each draw their congregations. Hymns swell from the pews, organ notes reverberating through vaulted ceilings. The familiar words of the Book of Common Prayer guide lips and hearts, spoken in unison, a steady rhythm of devotion. Sermons, too, are central, often long and stern, warning against pride, sloth, and impropriety. Yet there is comfort in their cadence, reassurance in their predictability. For many, the sermon is not only a spiritual reminder, but also a social moment. To be seen in the pews each week is as important as the message itself. Attendance is proof of respectability, a marker of moral discipline. Beyond Sunday, religion seeps into the rhythm of daily life. Morning and evening prayers are commonplace in households. At breakfast, a blessing may be spoken softly at night. Children kneel beside their beds to recite lines learned by heart. Scripture reading provides not only spiritual nourishment, but also a framework for conduct. Honesty, humility, and charity are praised, while selfishness and vice are condemned. Moral instruction appears everywhere, woven into education and even leisure. Books for children carry lessons of virtue disguised as tales of adventure or fables of animals. A lazy boy is punished by circumstance. A vain girl learns humility through hardship. Adults, too, read novels and tracts infused with moral guidance. Charles Dickens, for all his humor and vivid characters, delivers reminders of compassion, fairness, and the dangers of greed. Philanthropy flourishes under the banner of Christian duty. Ladies organize charitable societies, sewing garments for the poor or raising funds for orphanages. Gentlemen contribute to missionary work, both abroad and at home, convinced that spreading faith and decency is a noble responsibility. Even the smallest acts, donating a penny to a beggar, teaching a child to read, are framed as moral obligations, part of living a righteous life. Religion also dictates boundaries. Certain activities are forbidden on Sundays. Theaters close their doors, shops shutter early, and even the playing of certain games is discouraged. The Sabbath is sacred, meant for worship, rest, and quiet reflections. Families gather for Sunday dinner, often the grandest meal of the week, but afterward the atmosphere remains subdued. No boisterous laughter, no excessive display. To break the Sabbath is not only sinful but socially frowned upon. The sense of morality extends beyond religion itself, shaping the smallest gestures of etiquette. A gentleman offers his seat to a lady on the omnibus, not merely from politeness but from moral expectation. A lady avoids gossip, or at least frames it delicately, because to speak harshly is unchristian. Public displays of affection are restrained, emotions are kept measured and respectable. To live morally is to live within the bounds of propriety, and propriety is seen as a reflection of the soul. Even the landscape of the city reflects this moral lens. Temperance halls rise alongside public houses, their banners urging restraint from drink. Posters warn against the dangers of vice and promise redemption to those who repent. Missionaries travel into poorer districts, carrying Bibles and bread alike, convinced that salvation can be found both in Scripture and in clean living. And yet, morality is not uniform. Behind closed doors, human failings remain. Some drink despite temperance vows, others indulge in gossip, some quietly rebel against rigid expectations. Still, the prevailing culture insists on an outward display of virtue, Appearances matter as much as reality, and in many ways, they become one and the same. As evening descends, the day winds down once more with prayer. Candles flicker in sitting rooms as families gather, reading aloud from scripture before retiring. Outside, the city quiets, even the ever-present hum of carriages softens. In country villages, the silence of fields is broken only by the distant toll of church bells. Religion in Victorian life is not fiery or dramatic for most. Instead, it is steady, persistent, like a low hum beneath daily existence. It shapes speech, dress, habits, and thoughts, a constant reminder of duty to God, to family, to society. And as you drift into sleep, you can almost hear the last hymn of the evening service fading into the twilight, the voices of the congregation blending with the soft notes of the organ. The moral weight of the age settles gently, not as a burden but as a blanket of order, guiding each step, each word, each quiet breath into the patterns of a society built on faith and restraint. Morning light falls differently on a city alive with inventions. In mid-Victorian England, there is not only the weight of tradition and social rule, but also the unmistakable hum of progress. It is the age of railways, gaslight, and the first whisperings of electricity. It is the age when men and women alike look at the world and wonder what new marvel might be waiting just around the corner. Step outside into the streets of London and you see the evidence everywhere. Iron bridges span the Thames, their dark forms stretching across the water like giant skeletons of progress. Steam engines hiss and clatter, pulling carriages of passengers to destinations once thought impossibly far. The railway is more than transport, it is a symbol of speed, connection, and a shrinking world. Journeys that once took days are now measured in hours, and every whistle of a departing train feels like the start of a new era. Factories, too, define the age. Their tall chimneys push plumes of smoke into skies already thick with coal dust. Within their walls, machines rumble and roar, looms clatter, and hammers strike steel. The air smells of hot iron and oil, the scent of industry. For workers, the rhythm of these machines sets the pace of life, dawn to dusk, week after week. For the wealthy, the sight of endless goods pouring from factory doors is reassurance of prosperity and power. Science, once confined to the quiet halls of scholars, now spills into drawing rooms and newspapers. The discoveries of men like Charles Darwin, Michael Faraday, and James Clerk Maxwell stir both excitement and unease. Darwin's On the Origin of Species challenges old certainties, whispering that the natural world is shaped by forces of change rather than permanence. Faraday's experiments with electricity hint at unseen powers running silently through wires, powers that may one day light the streets without a single candle or gas flame. In parlours and clubs, Victorians debate these ideas with equal parts wonder and caution. Some embrace them wholeheartedly, convinced they live in the dawn of a golden age. Others frown, fearful that such progress might disturb the delicate balance of society and faith. Yet whether welcomed or resisted, the march of discovery is undeniable. Progress moves forward with steady, relentless steps. The Great Exhibition of 1851 captures this spirit perfectly. Held in the Crystal Palace, a vast structure of iron and glass that itself feels like a glimpse of the future. The exhibition brings together inventions and treasures from across the globe. Visitors wander through aisles glittering with marvels, steam engines polished to a shine, intricate clocks, gleaming textiles, even the latest household gadgets designed to make domestic life easier. The building itself, transparent and light-filled, seems almost to float, a palace built not of stone but of imagination. For those who attend, the exhibition is overwhelming. They see not only what mankind has already achieved, but also hints of what is to come. The Victorians live at a moment where the past and the future seem to touch hands. Horse-drawn carriages still rumble along cobblestones, yet overhead there is talk of iron ships crossing oceans and telegraph wires carrying messages faster than a bird can fly. At home, the influence of progress is felt in subtle ways. Gas lamps illuminate drawing rooms, casting steady light into corners once shadowed. New stoves make cooking less laborious, though servants still shoulder the burdens. Illustrated magazines deliver scientific wonders to readers eager for novelty. Even toys reflect invention: miniature steam engines for boys, mechanical dolls for girls, little lessons in the marvels of machinery disguised as play. But with progress comes tensions. Industry brings wealth to some and hardship to others. Factories employ children as young as 6, their small hands nimble enough to tend machines, their faces pale from long hours indoors. Cities grow rapidly, their populations swelling, but sanitation lags behind. Disease finds easy homes in crowded alleys and tenements. For every shining engine in a great hall, there is a cramped workshop where labourers toil unseen. Still, the prevailing mood is optimism. Victorians believe in improvement, of machines, of society, of the human mind itself. Schools emphasize not only moral discipline but also scientific learnings. Societies and clubs spring up dedicated to astronomy, geology, natural history. Men peer through telescopes at distant stars, while women collect seashells and fossils, finding beauty and knowledge in the smallest details of the natural world. Progress even touches the rhythm of communication. The electric telegraph, with its series of clicks and dots, carries news across continents in moments rather than weeks. For the first time, events in distant lands can be known almost instantly. The world feels smaller, its edges pulled closer together by invisible threads of wire. Evenings in Victorian homes often include discussions of these wonders. After the solemnity of dinner, families gather in parlours lit by gaslight. Fathers read aloud from newspapers describing the latest scientific advances. Sons dream of becoming engineers. Daughters sketch inventions in notebooks or imagine new ways of arranging domestic comforts. The sense of possibility hums softly in the air. And yet, amid all this progress, the rules of society remain as firm as ever. A lady may marvel at a new machine, but she must still pour tea with perfect grace. A gentleman may speak passionately of railways and electricity, but he must still bow politely, walk at a measured pace, and remember that progress is thrilling, but propriety is eternal. As night settles over the city, the factories quiet, their furnaces cooling, the railway stations dim, the last trains clattering into darkness. The streets glow faintly with gaslights, halos of orange piercing through the fog. Inside homes, lamps are extinguished one by one, leaving only the faint hum of a world in transitions. To live in Victorian England is to live in two times at once, one bound by the weight of traditions, the other propelled by the thrill of progress. It is a delicate balance, like standing on the edge of a bridge that stretches into the future. The Victorians do not yet know where the path will lead, but they walk it with curiosity, with confidence, and with a sense that tomorrow might bring wonders even greater than today. And as your eyes grow heavy, you can almost hear the gentle thrum of distant machinery, the quiet tick of a telegraph, the faint sigh of steam rising into the night. Progress, steady and certain, lulls the city to sleep. Evenings in Victorian England begin not with a rush of noise, but with a slow unfolding of rituals. As gas lamps flicker to life along the streets, and the fog settles into alleys and squares, households turn inwards, preparing for the hours after dinner. The work of the day is behind them, but the rules of society are not put aside. Even leisure is carefully shaped by custom, propriety, and expectation. For families of the middle and upper classes, evening entertainment often begins in the drawing room. The furniture is arranged with purpose: a sofa for polite conversations, small tables for cards or embroidery, a piano standing ready against the wall. The glow of a fire fills the space with warmth, the light catching on silver frames and porcelain ornaments. Curtains are drawn tightly against the soot and smoke outside, enclosing the family in a private world of order and civility. Music is perhaps the most common entertainment. A daughter may be asked to sit at the piano, her hands gliding across ivory keys, to produce a gentle waltz or a hymn. Her siblings might gather around her, turning the pages of sheet music, while parents listen with polite approval. Guests, if present, are expected to compliment her performance, enthusiastically enough to be kind, but not so effusively as to seem insincere. Songs are chosen with care, uplifting, respectable, nothing too boisterous or theatrical. Conversation, too, is an art of the evenings. Families exchange observations about the day's events or read aloud from the newspaper. If visitors arrive, topics must be handled with delicacy. The weather, the latest sermon, or a recent concert provide safe ground. Controversial subjects, politics, money, or scandal are best left unspoken. The rhythm of dialogue is steady, measured, designed not to disturb but to soothe, like the ticking of a clock on the mantelpiece. Board games and parlour amusements also find their place. Whist, a popular card game, draws players to small tables where the shuffle of cards and the quiet murmur of bids fill the air. Charades and riddles amuse younger guests, providing laughter that remains within the bounds of propriety. Sometimes the family reads together. One person aloud, the others listening, the cadence of words filling the silence with story. Novels by Dickens or Trollope, essays, or moral tales keep minds occupied while reinforcing the values of patience, kindness, and moderation. For the wealthy, evenings may take a grander form. A dinner party stretches late into the night, candlelight glimmering on polished silver and crystal glass. Guests arrive in carriages cloaked in evening dress, ladies in silk gowns, gentlemen in crisp black coats. After the meal, they retire to the parlour for music, dancing, or polite conversation. A string quartet may play in the corners, or a hired singer may offer a recital. Yet even in these grand settings, restraint is essential. Dances are graceful, not wild. Applause is measured, not exuberant. To enjoy oneself too obviously would be to risk appearing vulgar. The theatre is another favoured entertainment, especially in London. Playhouses bustle with life, their stages glowing with lamplights. Audiences gather to watch Shakespeare performed with solemn grandeur, or new comedies that walk the line between wit and respectability. For some, opera provides the height of refinement, the swell of voices and orchestra filling cavernous halls. Yet the experience remains shaped by etiquette. One dresses properly, arrives punctually, applauds at the correct moments. The performance is as much about being seen as about what is seen. Outside the glitter of theatres and parlours, another world exists, the quieter entertainments of the working classes. In taverns, men gather around mugs of ale, sharing stories and songs. Street performers entertain crowds with fiddles, ballads, or simple tricks. Penny theatres offer inexpensive diversions. Their shows roadier and less restrained than the productions of the West End. The rules here are looser, the laughter louder, the songs earthier. Yet even these gatherings reflect the need for release after long days of labour. Within households, as the evening wears on, the tone shifts again. The fire burns lower, lamps are dimmed, and activities grow quieter. Needlework is set aside, books closed, and instruments covered. Families may pause for evening prayers, gathering to recite scripture before dispersing to their rooms. The atmosphere becomes hushed, as if preparing not only for rest, but for the solemnity of another day to come. Step outside once more, and the city itself has its entertainments of the night. Gas lamps glow along main streets, their halos of light creating pools in the fog. Carriages rattle past, their wheels echoing against cobblestones. Newspaper boys call the late editions, their voices sharp against the otherwise muted air. But away from the main roads, the city grows quieter. The Thames glimmers in the dark, bridges stretching like shadows across its waters. The hum of industry fades, replaced by the occasional bark of a dog or the distant toll of a clock tower. For the Victorians, evening is not an escape from the rules of the day, but another stage on which they play their roles. Every song played, every word spoken, every laugh shared is gently measured against the codes of propriety. Entertainment is not reckless, but refined, designed to soothe the mind, strengthen the spirit, and reinforce the harmony of a life lived within boundaries. And so, as night deepens, families extinguish their lamps, one by one. Bedrooms grow quiet. The coal fire dies down to a soft glow, painting the walls with fading light. Outside, the last carriages roll home, their wheels fading into silence. The city, for all its restless energy, settles into slumber. In this age of propriety and progress, even leisure carries a kind of dignity. And as you drift now toward your own rests, you can almost hear the faint notes of a piano lingering in the air, a gentle waltz carrying the Victorian night softly into dreams. As the final echoes of evening conversation fade, and the last embers of the hearth begin to dim, the Victorian household turns toward the rituals of night. Unlike the bustle of day or the structured entertainments of evenings, these moments are more intimate, more private. Here, within the hushed confines of bedrooms and softly lit corridors, one glimpses the quieter rhythms of Victorian life, where individuals shed the public roles of the day and retreat into their own company. The process begins with preparation. Bedrooms, cool and faintly scented with coal smoke or lavender sachets tucked into drawers, are lit by candles or a small oil lamp. Shadows stretch long across wallpaper patterned with roses or geometric stripes, while the heavy drapes are pulled close to keep out both the chill and the curious gaze of the street. Servants move quietly, turning down beds, bringing warm water in porcelain pitchers, laying out nightclothes freshly laundered. In wealthier homes, the lady's maid or valet assists with undressing, unfastening the countless hooks, buttons, and laces of the day's garments. For women, the ritual of disrobing is both relief and ceremony. The stiff corset is loosened, its laces slackening until lungs expand with ease. Layers of skirts and petticoats are lifted away, leaving behind only the soft, simple nightgown of cotton or flannels. The weight of the day's costume falls aside, and with it the careful posture, the restrained gestures, the watchful propriety. Hair, pulled tight all day, is brushed out until it flows loose over the shoulders, each stroke of the brush steady and soothing. Some women count their strokes 50, 100, believing it strengthens and smooths the hair. For men, the ritual is simpler but no less defined. The formal layers of coat, waistcoat, and cravat are removed, folded neatly by the valet or laid carefully across a chair. Shirts are changed for looser nightshirts, stockings removed. Slippers exchanged for bare feet against cool floors. Some sit briefly at a small writing desk, penning a final note, recording the day's events in a diary, or completing a letter to be posted in the morning. Others smoke a final pipe by the fire, its scent mingling with the fading glow of coal. Cleanliness plays its part. Though few enjoy the luxury of a hot bath every evening, many follow smaller routines, washing face and hands in the basin of cold or lukewarm water, dabbing the skin dry with a towel. Teeth may be cleaned with tooth powders made of chalk or crushed shells, sometimes flavored with peppermints. The water itself carries the chill of the house, bracing and sharp. Yet it marks a boundary between the wear of the day and the restfulness of night. Night prayers are another element woven into these private hours. Families may gather briefly to recite scripture together before dispersing to their rooms, or individuals may kneel alone beside the bed. Words are spoken quietly, petitions for health protection and forgiveness murmured into the stillness. In many homes, the Bible rests near the bedside, its pages worn from nightly reading. The act, whether deeply felt or gently habitual, offers a sense of order, anchoring the solitary moment to a larger rhythm of faith and duty. Children, too, follow their rituals. A nursemaid or parent helps them into nightclothes, tucks them into narrow beds, and ensures a candle burns just long enough to chase away shadows. Stories may be read aloud, biblical tales, moral fables, or simple rhymes. A kiss on the forehead, a whispered, "Sleep well," and the nursery falls silent, the faint sound of lullabies lingering only in memories. The transition from public self to private self is most visible in these moments. By day, every gesture is measured, every word weighed against society's expectations. By night, in the quiet of a bedroom, one may sigh freely, loosen the bodies, and allow thoughts to wander without fear of judgment. It is here, brushing hair before the mirror or folding clothes in the dim glow of a candle, that individuals reclaim something of themselves from the endless choreography of propriety. Beyond the household walls, the city night deepens. In poorer districts, the rituals are less refined but no less meaningful. A laborer sets aside boots stiff with wear, washes quickly with a shared bucket of water, and lies down on a straw mattress, exhaustion carrying him swiftly into sleep. A seamstress folds her work neatly before resting her head, knowing tomorrow will bring the same long hours. Even here, where comfort is scarce, small gestures, tidying one's space, whispering a prayer, arranging a blanket just so, carry the same human longing for rest, order, and peace. Back in the quieter rooms of wealthier homes, the last lamps are extinguished. Curtains close out the gaslit streets, doors are latched, and silence settles over staircases and halls. In the bedrooms, the horsehair mattress creaks slightly as its occupant lies down, the weight of quilts pulled close against the night's chills. The ticking of a clock is steady in the darkness, each beat a reminder of time's passage, carrying the household from one day into the next. Dreams are shaped by the day left behind, by the measured conversations, the careful gestures, the rules observed and sometimes quietly resisted. Yet in the stillness of night, with propriety momentarily set aside, the Victorian self drifts into a realm where no etiquette governs, where thoughts and desires are free. Thus ends the day, not with grand declarations, but with soft rituals of preparation, reflection, and surrender. Night in Victorian England is less a pause than a passage, guiding its people gently from the rigid order of daylight into the private landscapes of sleep. Night has fully settled now, and the lamps of London have grown dim. Carriages no longer rattle over the cobblestones, and even the smoke from countless chimneys seems to drift more slowly, merging with the midnight fog. Inside the houses, silence reigns. The bustle of servants has ceased. The final prayers have been whispered, and every room, from nursery to drawing rooms, has surrendered to the stillness of sleep. You lie in bed, wrapped in the faintly scratchy warmth of cotton sheets and heavy wool blankets. The coal fire has burned low, leaving only a dull orange glow that paints soft, flickering shadows across the walls. The wardrobe stands like a sentinel in the corner. The dressing table reflects the faint glimmer of candle stubs, and the mirror, half covered with cloth, holds no reflection now. All is hushed, all is waiting. This is the hour when the city seems to pause between one breath and the next. The strictures of the day, the rules of dress, the codes of speech, the rituals of dining and calling, have been set aside. No one is watching now. No one is measuring your posture or timing your words. Alone in the quiet of night, you are free to feel the gentle ache of your ribs released from the corset, or the pleasant weight of blankets pressing you into stillness. You are free for a few short hours to simply be. Dreams come softly, shaped by the textures of Victorian life. They carry the rhythm of carriage wheels, the scent of coal smoke, the gentle pressure of gloved hands folded in a drawing room. In your dreams, perhaps you walk again through fog-shrouded streets, lamps glowing like stars at ground level. Or perhaps you are seated at a piano, your fingers gliding over keys, the melody rising and falling as candlelight trembles on the music. The figures around you smile politely, but their outlines blur, softened by the haze of sleep. Some dreams return to the great houses, where corridors stretch endlessly and parlors open one after another, each filled with the hum of quiet voices. Others drift to the humble rooms of working families, where straw mattresses creak and tired children curl together for warmth. Even in dreams, the boundaries of class and custom remain, but softened, as though the rigid rules of the day dissolve in the night air. The Victorian age was a time of immense change, an era of industry and invention, but also of restraint and order. To live within it was to walk constantly upon a narrow path, where a misstep could mean social disgrace. Yet here, in the silence of sleep, those burdens lift. The mind wanders freely beyond the expectations of morning calls, beyond the stiffness of etiquettes, beyond the careful masks worn in daylight. In dreams, even the most proper Victorian may smile unrestrained, dance without thought of who is watching, or speak words never dared in waking hours. And so the night deepens. The last coal embers fade into blackness. The ticking of the clock grows softer, a lullaby of time itself. Outside, the fog wraps the city in a shroud, muffling its restless heart. Horses stand quiet in their stables, their breath steaming gently into the cool air. The river, broad and dark, slides silently past, carrying with it the reflections of faint stars above. In this stillness, there is space for reflection. The rules, the rituals, the endless demands of propriety, they were not simply burdens, but a way of weaving order into a rapidly changing world. They provided comfort as much as constraint, structure as much as restriction. To live as a Victorian was to live by pattern and repetition, a rhythm that guided each hour of the day, each gesture of the hand, each glance of the eye. But the human spirit, then as now, finds its freedom in moments like this, in the quiet after the lamps are snuffed, in the softness of dreams, in the private self that emerges only when the world cannot see. That is where the heart breathes most deeply, and where the stories of lives long past continue to whisper. The Victorian night does not end abruptly. Instead, it folds gently into the promise of morning. The faintest light will soon filter through sooty glass panes. Servants will rise, fires will be stoked, dresses and waistcoats will be fastened once again. The rituals will begin anew, as they always do. But for now, in this moment between night and dawn, there is only quiet. You close your eyes and let yourself drift. The echoes of the Victorian world, its rule, its rituals, its endless ceremonies, fade into the background, becoming nothing more than the soft hum of history. What remains is the comfort of stillness, the safety of sleep, and the knowledge that even in the most rigid of times, people found ways to rest, to dream, to simply be humans. And so the story of the Victorian day closes, not with ceremony or fanfare, but with silence. A silence deep enough to carry you into your own dreams, where time itself loosens, and the past becomes as soft and distant as the fading glow of embers on a hearth. Good night.